Welcome, brave souls, to Florida State, known for sunny beaches, swaying palms, and bustling cities. But behind the laughter of schoolyards and the routine of classrooms lies a darker truth. In quiet hallways and abandoned campuses, time stands still, and the past refuses to leave. Tonight, we explore the 25 haunted schools in Florida where time stands still. Places where chalkboards write themselves, lockers slam without reason, and shadowy figures haunt the classrooms. These schools are more than places of learning. They are haunted halls where memories linger and spirits roam freely. St. Augustine High School, located in the nation's oldest city, carries a history deeper than its brick walls and oak-lined courtyards suggest. Beneath its academic life and daily bustle lies something older, something restless. The city of St. Augustine has long been a crossroads for the living, and the dead a place where Spanish forts, colonial streets, and centuries of buried secrets blend with the salt-heavy air of the Atlantic. Within the halls of this school, that lingering energy seems to have taken root. Teachers, custodians, and students alike have whispered of strange occurrences that seem to defy reason. It usually begins after dusk, when the final bell has long since rung and the campus falls quiet. The janitorial staff, accustomed to cleaning empty classrooms, report hearing footsteps echoing along the corridors. Sometimes the sounds follow a pattern as if someone is pacing, lost in thought, but when they check, no one is there. The echoes vanish as suddenly as they appear, leaving behind only the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of the wind moving through the palm trees outside. One former custodian recalled locking up the gymnasium late one night when he heard what sounded like sneakers squeaking across the floor. Thinking he had forgotten a student, he went inside and switched on the lights. The gym was empty, yet the bleachers creaked as if someone had just sat down. The next moment, a basketball rolled out from the shadows and stopped at his feet. No one was there to claim it. He left early that night and never volunteered for late shifts again. Students, too, have had their share of unsettling encounters. Many speak of room 214, a classroom in the older wing of the building that seems to attract strange activity. Desks shift positions overnight, books fall from shelves without warning, and sometimes faint chalk marks appear on the blackboard in the morning even though no one has used it for days. A few students who stayed late for extracurricular activities reported seeing the faint outline of a woman standing at the window, gazing out toward the courtyard. She vanishes the instant anyone looks directly at her. Some say she is the spirit of a teacher who once worked there decades ago, a beloved English instructor who met a tragic end in a car accident on her way home from a school event. Her classroom remained vacant for several years afterward, as if the administration itself felt an unspoken discomfort. Even after renovations, her presence still lingers, gentle but persistent, as though she refuses to leave the students she once cared for. Others believe the haunting runs deeper than one spirit. The land the school stands on was once part of a Spanish colonial outpost, and later, it bordered a small burial ground for soldiers and settlers lost to disease and conflict. Excavations nearby have revealed remnants of old foundations, pottery, and bone-silent reminders that centuries of history lie beneath the schoolyard. Some locals believe the disturbances stem not from tragedy within the school, but from the restless souls who never found peace beneath its soil. One of the most unnerving stories comes from the band room, a place filled with laughter and music during the day, but eerie silence at night. Students practicing alone have reported hearing faint melodies echoing from the far end of the room, notes played on instruments that aren't even present. The old piano sometimes emits a single tone by itself, its keys unmoving. During one evening rehearsal, the lights flickered, and several witnesses saw the outline of a young man standing behind the drum set. When the light steadied, he was gone. Teachers tend to explain away these incidents as drafts, electrical quirks, or youthful imagination, but even they aren't immune to unease. One veteran teacher, who had spent over 20 years at the school, described hearing whispers in the hallway during a grading session late at night. She thought it was the custodial crew, but when she stepped into the hall, she found the doors locked and the air suddenly cold. The whispers ceased instantly, replaced by the faint sound of footsteps fading toward the stairwell. The school's security footage has also raised eyebrows. On several occasions, motion sensors triggered alarms in empty hallways. When reviewed, the footage showed faint shapes, mist-like figures gliding through the corridor, or shadows moving against a grain of the light. None lasted more than a few seconds, but enough to unsettle anyone watching. Maintenance workers have also found classroom doors unlocked the next morning, even after confirming they were secured the night before. Local paranormal investigators have taken interest in St. Augustine High School, conducting nighttime vigils with audio recorders and thermal cameras. They claim to have captured disembodied voices, soft, almost conversational, yet impossible to trace. One investigator reported a strong electromagnetic reading near the auditorium, accompanied by what she described as the sensation of someone standing directly behind her. When she turned, no one was there, only the echo of her own breath. Some of the city's older residents, steeped in the folklore of St. Augustine, believe the hauntings reflect the town's nature itself. This is a city where every brick seems steeped in memory, where soldiers, settlers, and sailors have lived, fought, and died across 4 centuries. It's said that St. Augustine's ghosts do not confine themselves to cemeteries or old forts. They wander where their emotions linger most strongly. For some, that may be the grounds of a modern high school that unknowingly rests upon their final steps. Even today, students tell newcomers to avoid the second-floor hallway after dark, claiming you can still hear faint laughter or feel a cold hand brush against your arm. Others whisper about the girl seen sitting alone in the bleachers during early morning practice, someone no one can identify, who vanishes when approached. Tampa Bay Technical High School, known locally as Tech High, has long been a source of pride for Tampa. With its reputation for strong academics and innovative programs, it stands as a symbol of progress and modern education. Yet behind its polished reputation and bright hallways lies a side that few dare to discuss openly. Students, faculty, and even custodians have whispered for years about eerie happenings within the school, unexplainable sounds, sudden temperature drops, and ghostly figures that seem to observe the living from just beyond the light. The stories begin quietly, often dismissed as tricks of the imagination. But those who spend long hours within the building, especially after sunsets, peak differently. Lockers slam shut with a deafening echo, even when no one is nearby. Books fall from shelves without warning. Whispers float along the hallways, so faint they seem to come from the walls themselves. Some students have described hearing their names called softly, only to turn and find empty corridors stretching behind them. One of the most unsettling tales comes from the Old North Hallway, a section of the school that predates most of the newer expansions. During the day, it's busy and bright, lined with classrooms and workshop spaces. But at night, it becomes something else entirely. Custodians claim that when the halls grow silent, they hear doors creaking open one by one, followed by the sharp clang of lockers slamming shut in sequences. If an unseen student is running late for class, the air grows cold there, unnaturally so, and lights flicker even after being replaced. A teacher once stayed late to finish grading assignments and decided to take a short walk to the faculty lounge. As she passed through the dim hallway, she felt a sudden gust of cold air brush past her, odd, given that the school's air conditioning shuts off after hours. Then came the sound of faint footsteps following her own, slow and deliberate. When she turned around, the corridor was empty. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing just out of sight, watching. She left the papers unfinished that night and refused to stay after dark again. The whispers are perhaps the most unnerving phenomenon. Many students have reported hearing indistinct voices in the classrooms when they are alone, a soft murmuring that fades when anyone tries to listen closely. Some describe it as the sound of distant conversations, teachers lecturing, students responding, but with no clear words, just an echo of the past. On more than one occasion, the intercom system has crackled to life unexpectedly after hours, broadcasting faint static and, for a moment, what sounds like a muffled voice giving instructions from long ago. One rumor ties these disturbances to a tragedy that allegedly occurred decades ago. before the current building was expanded. According to the story, a teacher collapsed in one of the classrooms during a late-night grading session and was discovered the next morning by a custodian. Since then, some believe her spirit still roams the halls, carrying out her eternal duty of watching over her students. Witnesses have described seeing a shadowy figure standing near classroom doors, hands clasped behind her back, as if overseeing the room. The shape appears solid for a moment, then dissolves into the dim light. A former student recounted an experience in one of the computer labs. Working late on a project, he heard the faint tapping of keys coming from another computer station. Assuming a classmate had stayed behind, he didn't think much of it until he realized the sound was coming from a darkened corner where no one was sitting. When he turned on the light, the keyboard continued to click for several seconds before abruptly stopping. The air turned icy, and his screen flickered to black. He packed up and left without looking back. The school auditorium also holds its share of unease. During rehearsals, theater students have noticed seats creaking as though someone unseen is settling in to watch. Stage lights flicker, despite being checked and rewired repeatedly. Some actors claim to see a silhouette moving in the wings, a tall figure standing motionless near the curtains. When approached, there is no one there, only the faint scent of chalk dust and the echo of a slow, deliberate clap. Even the campus's outdoor areas have an atmosphere that shifts after dark. Near the workshop buildings, the sound of heavy machinery sometimes echoes faintly, though no equipment is running. Teachers doing late-night maintenance have reported seeing faint lights moving across the fields, like lanterns carried by unseen hands. The school's security footage has captured unexplained motion shadows passing across locked doors, reflections in windows where no one stood. Skeptics often try to rationalize the events. The building settles. The air conditioning creates drafts, and imagination fills the gaps. But even those who dismiss the ghost stories admit that something about Tampa Bay Technical High feels different at night. The atmosphere changes, the silence grows heavy, and a chill seems to settle deep into the walls themselves. One custodian who worked at the school for over 20 years described the strangest night of his career. He was sweeping near the science wing when he heard the unmistakable sound of chalk scraping across a board. He entered the room and froze. On the board, fresh writing appeared, letter by letter, spelling out a name his own. The chalk then rolled off the tray and shattered on the floor. He left the building immediately and never returned for a night shift again. Some teachers speak softly about the watchers, the ghostly figures rumored to appear in the corners of classrooms or reflected faintly in glass doors. Students have reported seeing them, two pale shapes, standing perfectly still, as if observing lessons that ended long ago. These apparitions never speak or move, but their presence is unmistakable. It's as though they belong to another time, reliving a routine that no longer exists. Despite the unsettling reputation, the school continues to thrive academically, its students excelling in programs that prepare them for the future. Yet, beneath that energy of youth and progress, there remains the quiet pulse of something ancient, something that refuses to be forgotten. The spirits that linger in Tampa Bay Technical High seem tied not to malice, but to memory echoes of teachers, students, and lessons long past. Trapped between the ticking of clocks and the fading light of day, Orlando High School stands as one of the city's proudest educational landmarks. Its broad courtyards filled with the noise of daily life, students rushing between classes, teachers calling out reminders, and the steady hum of routine. But beneath the surface of this vibrant atmosphere lies a darker story. At the far end of the campus, behind a set of rusted double doors marked closed for renovation, is the school's abandoned wing. For decades, no classes have been held there. The paint peels from the walls, the floor tiles are cracked, and the air carries a faint scent of mildew and dust. Yet, despite the disrepair, there are signs that the wing is not as empty as it seems. Students and staff who have dared to wander beyond the warning signs tell of experiences that defy explanation. Some speak of laughter drifting down the hallways, light, playful, and unmistakably human. Though the rooms are dark and deserted, shadowy figures flit between the desks, too quick to see clearly, but solid enough to make the heart race. The stories began many years ago, after a mysterious incident closed the wing for good. Rumors swirl about what happened. Some say a gas leak caused a small explosion. Others whisper of a fire that broke out one evening during detention, taking the lives of several students before help could arrive. The official records are vague, and the school's administration avoids discussing the matter. Yet, the locked doors and boarded windows suggest a history that refuses to stay buried. A custodian who worked at Orlando High for over 20 years told one of the earliest accounts. He had been asked to retrieve some old furniture from storage in the abandoned wing. The hallways were silent, save for the creak of his cartwheels. Then, from somewhere deeper inside, he heard the faint sound of laughter, a group of children, laughing as though at a joke. He called out, thinking maybe some students had snuck in, but no one answered. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the cracked walls, until it seemed to surround him. When he turned to leave, he saw a classroom door slowly swing open by itself. Inside, the desks were arranged neatly, as though waiting for class to begin, yet the faint outline of figures seemed to move among them. He dropped his keys and fled, vowing never to enter that part of the building again. Over the years, teachers and security guards have reported similar experiences. Late at night, motion sensors trigger alarms in the closed-off wing. Yet when guards investigate, they find no sign of intrusion, only cold air seeping from under the doors and the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. Some claim to hear faint music, like an old-school song being hummed by unseen voices. On rare occasions, they glimpse silhouettes moving along the hallways, through the narrow windows, vanishing the moment anyone approaches. Students, of course, are drawn to the forbidden. Dares to enter the abandoned wing have become a secret tradition, passed down through generations. Those brave enough to step inside rarely last long. One group of seniors described hearing the scrape of chairs moving on their own and the faint whisper of chalk against a blackboard. When they turned their flashlights toward the sound, the words "still here" were written across the board in shaky, white lines. The next morning, teachers found the same phrase, scrawled again though the chalk had been locked away. Another student recounted an experience during detention when her classroom was located near the sealed doors. The teacher had stepped out briefly, leaving her alone. She heard faint tapping sounds, like someone knocking from the other side of the wall. Thinking it was another student, she knocked back. The tapping paused, then repeated in a clear rhythm, 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. When she stood and placed her hand against the wall, a chill passed through her so sharply that she gasped. Later, when she told her teacher, the color drained from the woman's face. That same pattern of knocks had been reported years earlier by another student, sitting in the same spot. The school's faculty mostly dismissed these stories, attributing them to overactive imaginations and the natural noises of an aging building. But those who spent long evenings finishing paperwork or supervising after-hours programs tell a different tale. One teacher swears she saw a student standing in the doorway of her classroom after sunset, a boy in an old-fashioned uniform, smiling faintly before fading into the dark. Another staff member, staying late for grading, heard the soft rustle of pages turning in the empty library, followed by a quiet sigh, like someone frustrated by a forgotten lesson. Paranormal investigators who've been granted brief access to the site describe intense cold spots and unexplained electrical fluctuations. Some claim to have recorded whispers on their audio equipment, voices, saying names, laughter, and even faint echoes of the school bell. One thermal camera captured what appeared to be the heat signature of several figures sitting in an empty classroom. When the investigators entered the room seconds later, it was vacant, but the chairs were still warm to the touch. Some locals believe the haunting is a form of residual energy, an imprint left behind by the students who once filled those halls. Their laughter, their lessons, their moments of joy and fear, all of it preserved somehow, replaying endlessly in the darkness. Others think the spirits are aware, bound to the site by the tragedy that ended their lives. A few even say they're protective, watching over the school that was once their home, ensuring it remains safe for the living. Today, the abandoned wing stands silent, locked behind faded caution tape and heavy chains. Yet, every so often, Those walking past after dark swear they see light flickering beneath the door frames, as though an invisible class is still in session. The faint echo of footsteps carries down the hallway, followed by the distant sound of children laughing. No matter how many times the administration insists the wing will be reopened someday, no one seems eager to begin the work. Contractors refuse the job after spending only a few hours inside, citing bad energy and strange noises. The area remains untouched, frozen in time, guarded by whatever forces linger there. Miami Central High School stands proudly under the tropical sun, its palm-lined entrance and wide courtyards filled each morning with the familiar sounds of student chatter and ringing bells. Yet, as the day fades and the crowds disperse, a strange quiet settles over the campus, a silence broken only by whispers of the past. For beneath its energetic exterior lies a darker legacy. This school, known for its long history and community spirit, is also remembered for the tragedies that occurred within its walls. Over the decades, several accidents, sudden, unexplained, and heartbreaking, have left emotional scars that never truly healed. Some say those lost souls never left. The first tragedy happened in the late 1960s, not long after the school opened. During a major storm, a lightning strike hit the auditorium while a rehearsal was underway. The building shook violently, plunging it into darkness. Though no one was killed that night, several students were injured, and the event became part of the school's folklore. In the following years, others would speak of hearing faint screams and panicked footsteps inside the auditorium when it was empty, as if the storm were reliving itself behind closed doors. Another accident struck in the 1980s, this time in the gymnasium. A student athlete collapsed suddenly during practice and never regained consciousness. His loss devastated the entire school. Ever since, strange phenomena have been reported around the gym. Cold drafts in the humid Miami air, echoes of sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, and the sound of a bouncing basketball when the lights are off. Coaches locking up at night sometimes hear the faint rhythm of a dribble, the squeal of shoes, and the thump of a ball hitting the backboard, yet no one is there. Security guards making nightly rounds often describe the same unnerving pattern. The campus appears perfectly still, yet when they pass the gym, they hear the faint echo of laughter and cheers, as though a game is still in progress. When they unlock the doors, the noise stops instantly. The gym sits empty, lit only by the flicker of the exit signs. The air feels colder there, heavier, as if the space remembers every sound, every breath, every final heartbeat. The auditorium, too, carries an atmosphere unlike any other part of the school. By day, it's used for assemblies, plays, and musical performances. By night, it becomes a chamber of echoes. Stage lights flicker to life without power, shadows move behind the curtains, and the faint ring of an old school bell resonates through the silence. Students rehearsing late often report seeing a figure in the upper balcony, a tall silhouette that watches quietly before vanishing into the dark. Some believe it's the spirit of a former music teacher who passed away during a rehearsal many years ago, still keeping watch over the stage she loved. One of the most famous encounters took place in the early 2000s, when a drama club stayed after hours preparing for a performance. As they practiced their lines, the lights dimmed suddenly, and a sound echoed through the empty auditorium, single, clear ring of a bell, followed by the faint shuffle of feet. At first, they thought it was a prank, but when they turned toward the doors, they saw them slowly swinging shut on their own. A student backstage reported seeing movement in the wings, a pale figure drifting between the curtains. Terrified, the group fled and refused to return after dark. The school's maintenance staff have their own stories. One custodian working late in the gym reported hearing the distinct sound of a whistle blowing, followed by the rhythmic stomping of feet, as if a team were running drills. He assumed the sound came from a nearby practice field until he realized it was coming from inside the gym itself. When he stepped in, the noise ceased. He described a faint, icy mist lingering in the air and the overwhelming sense that he was being watched. Another staff member, cleaning the auditorium's back hallway, saw a reflection in the window, a woman standing just behind him, dressed in outdated clothing, When he turned around, no one was there. The phenomenon of the phantom school bell is perhaps the most haunting and most often reported. Long after the modern bell system was replaced, students and teachers alike have heard the echo of the old mechanical bell, its tone lower, metallic, and unmistakably from another era. It rings during the quietest hours, sometimes after midnight, reverberating through the empty halls as if signaling the start of a class that will never begin. Some locals attribute the hauntings to residual energy, the idea that moments of intense emotion leave an imprint on a place. The combination of youthful energy, sudden tragedy, and the emotional weight of memory might explain why the spirits linger. Others believe these are intelligent presences, aware of their surroundings, and still attached to the routines of the school. Teachers preparing early in the morning have spoken of footsteps following them, the sound of someone pacing the hall just outside their classroom. When they open the door, the hallway is empty, yet the faint scent of chalk and old books lingers in the air. Even during the day, some areas seem colder than others. The hall leading from the gym to the auditorium has been called the cold corridor by students. They describe feeling a sudden drop in temperature as they walk through, their breath visible for just a moment despite the Florida heat. Some feel a tug on their clothing or a brush against their arm, as if unseen students are hurrying past, late for class. The school administration avoids acknowledging the hauntings, but the stories persist. Paranormal enthusiasts have occasionally tried to investigate, though official permission is rarely granted. Those few who claim to have recorded inside the school report strange anomalies, voices whispering through static, faint laughter, and footsteps pacing across the gym floor long after the building was locked. One recording even captured the faint toll of a bell, echoing through silence, marking time for no one. Despite its eerie reputation, Miami's Central High remains a place of learning, filled with ambition and life. Yet the presence of the past is undeniable. When the sun dips below the palm trees and the sky deepens into twilight, the building seems to change. The breeze stills. The air grows thick. The empty halls carry the soft echo of movement, the faint hum of voices, and the mournful tone of a long-forgotten bell. Jacksonville High School sits quietly at the edge of the city, a sprawling red brick building surrounded by tall oaks and the steady hum of nearby traffic. By day, it's a normal high school students bustling between classes, the chatter of voices in the courtyard, and the rhythmic sound of the bell marking each hour. But when night falls, and the last light fades from the windows, the atmosphere changes entirely. The stillness of the corridors becomes heavy, and the echoes that linger in the darkness no longer belong to the living. For decades, rumors have swirled about Jacksonville High's haunted past. Teachers and students alike whisper about the phantom students said to wander its hallways after dark. Doors slam without warning, lights flicker even when the electricity has been shut off, and cold drafts flow through classrooms that have been sealed for years. Visitors who enter the building at night describe an overwhelming feeling of being watched, as though unseen eyes follow their every move from the shadows. The origin of these hauntings, like most ghost stories, is shrouded in mystery. Some trace it back to a fire in the early 1950s that damaged a section of the school's east wing. Though official records mention only structural loss, local folklore tells a darker version that several students were trapped during the blaze. The building was later rebuilt, but the original foundation remains beneath layers of concrete and tile. Many believe the spirits of those lost that night still walk the corridors, forever reliving their final moments. Others claim the haunting began after a tragic car accident in the 1970s, when a group of seniors returning from a school event lost control near the main entrance. In the weeks following their deaths, custodians working late reported hearing the squeal of tires and distant laughter echoing from the parking lot, as if the students were still arriving for one last night of celebration. One of the most infamous locations in the school is the Old West hallway, a narrow corridor that connects several unused classrooms from an earlier era. It's been closed off for years, its windows covered in dust and its doors chained shut. But despite the barriers, strange noises still emerge from within. Footsteps pacing back and forth, the sharp slam of lockers, and occasionally, the faint murmur of voices. Some who have ventured close claim to see movement through the frosted glass, pained shadows shifting quickly, as if students are hurrying to class. Security guards have their own share of unsettling experiences. One guard, assigned to patrol the building overnight, recalled hearing music drifting from the gymnasium around 2 a.m. An old marching tune played faintly, as though from a distant radio. When he went to investigate, the lights inside the gym flickered on by themselves. The bleachers creaked, and the sound of sneakers squeaking against the floor echoed in the empty space. The guard fled, swearing he heard faint applause follow him out the door. Another guard reported seeing a figure standing in one of the classroom windows during his rounds. A tall student in an outdated uniform, staring silently into the courtyard. Thinking someone had broken in, he radioed for assistance, but when he entered the room, it was empty. Dust covered the floor, undisturbed, yet the faint scent of smoke hung in the air. Teachers who stayed late to grade papers or organize lessons described similar encounters. One history teacher recalled working in her classroom after dark when she heard the unmistakable sound of chalk scraping across the blackboard. Turning around, she saw words appearing slowly on the board. "Stay quiet." The chalk then rolled off the tray and shattered on the floor. When she gathered her things to leave, the overhead lights flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. Students have made the abandoned parts of Jacksonville High the subject of countless dares and urban legends. Tales circulate about the locker that knocks back, an old metal locker that, when tapped 3 times, returns the gesture with a hollow echo. A group of seniors once decided to test these legends. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they entered the school late at night through an unlocked side door. They laughed as they explored the hallways, dismissing the eerie creaks and faint drafts as nothing more than age. But their laughter stopped when they reached the west hallway. One student shined his flashlight ahead, and for a brief moment, they all saw a group of figures standing at the far end. Silhouettes of students lined up as if waiting for the bell. The lights flickered, and the figures vanished. Moments later, every locker door in the hallway slammed shut at once, echoing like a thunderclap. The group ran, leaving their equipment behind. The next morning, a janitor found the flashlights on the floor, all their batteries drained. Even maintenance crews refused to work alone in certain parts of the school. Electricians replacing lights in the auditorium have reported feeling cold spots and seeing movement in the balcony. One man described hearing the sound of a door creak open behind him, followed by the soft thud of footsteps approaching. When he turned around, no one was there, but the ladder he had been standing on moments before had been shifted several inches across the floor. The paranormal activity extends even to modern areas of the building. The intercom system occasionally activates by itself, broadcasting faint static or, more disturbingly, the sound of a school bell that hasn't been used in decades. Teachers have heard faint voices through the speakers, whispering phrases that sound like class instructions or roll calls from another time. Despite these events, Jacksonville High continues to operate, its students mostly unaware of what stirs after hours. Yet, for those who have seen or heard the inexplicable, the truth is undeniable. They speak of the school as if it exists in 2 worlds, one bustling with life and learning, and another, quieter one, filled with echoes of the past. When night falls and the campus empties, the building seems to come alive again. Lights flicker in the darkened hallways. Doors open and close, with no hand to guide them. Faint voices murmur through the classrooms, and the steady rhythm of footsteps travels down corridors that lead nowhere. Some say it's merely the old school settling, its walls expanding and contracting with the Florida heat. Others believe it's something more, the restless spirits of those who once walked these halls, forever bound to the lessons they never finished. Clearwater High School stands near the shimmering coastline of Florida's Gulf, where sunlight dances off the water and salt air carries a sense of calm. Yet, as dusk falls and the campus empties, that calm dissolves into something altogether different, something chilling. Locals say the spirits of former students still roam the school's hallways, bound by memories of the past and tragedies that time has not erased. Those who linger after hours tell of whispers echoing through empty corridors, faint laughter fading down stairwells, and ghostly writing that appears on chalkboards long after lessons have ended. The school's history stretches back nearly a century, making it one of the oldest educational institutions in the area. It has seen generations of students walk through its doors, some leaving with diplomas and dreams, others leaving with stories cut short. In the 1940s, during an expansion project, part of the original structure collapsed unexpectedly, injuring several workers and killing one student who had snuck inside to explore. That tragedy marked the beginning of the legends. Teachers reported hearing footsteps in the new wing before it officially opened, as if someone unseen was inspecting the work. When the first classes began there, students claimed to hear the faint tap of shoes pacing above them, even though the ceiling led only to the roof. Over the years, Clearwater High has been the site of smaller incidents in the science labs, fires in the gymnasium, and sudden power failures that left classrooms in darkness. Each time, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the building itself absorbed the pain. Janitors who work the late shift say that after midnight, the air turns icy cold in certain hallways, even in the middle of Florida's humid summers. Lockers clang open and shut by themselves, echoing down the hall like a chorus of unseen hands. One teacher, who preferred not to be named, recalled an unsettling experience from a few years ago. She was grading papers in her classroom long after everyone had gone home. Around 10 p.m., she heard the sound of chalk scraping against a board. Thinking it was a prank, she turned to scold whoever had entered, but the room was empty. The chalk in her tray began to move again, slowly writing out the words, "I'm still here." She fled the room and refused to teach there again. Students, too, have shared stories passed down from one graduating class to the next. One particularly well-known tale involves Room 212, a classroom that was sealed off in the 1980s after a small electrical fire. When it was finally reopened years later, workers found old desks covered in dust, books scattered across the floor, and on the blackboard, faint but legible words written in chalk. "Don't forget us." Some believe the message was left by former students from decades ago, but others claim the handwriting matched that of a girl who died in the building during the fire. In the old library wing, now used for storage, visitors have reported hearing pages rustling as if unseen readers are still turning them. Security guards have caught strange shapes on camera, blurred outlines that seem to drift between the stacks. One guard said he once saw the faint reflection of a young boy in a glass case, staring back at him from inside. When he turned around, the hallway behind him was empty. Every October, when the nights grow longer and the storms roll in from the Gulf, the activity seems to intensify. Teachers report flickering lights during evening meetings, doors that refuse to stay locked, and faint music that echoes from the old auditorium where dances were once held. Some believe these are harmless echoes of the past, residual energy left behind by decades of life and laughter. But others say the spirits are aware, trapped in an endless cycle, trying to remind the living that they are still there. One student who stayed late for a theater rehearsal recounted seeing a shadowy figure seated in the front row of the auditorium. Thinking it was a teacher, she called out, but there was no response. As she moved closer, the figure faded away completely, leaving only the faint smell of smoke in the air. That same night, the stage curtains began to sway, though the building's ventilation system was off. Perhaps the most chilling reports come from those who walked the corridors alone at night. They described the unmistakable sensation of being followed, of hearing soft footsteps that stop when they stop and resume when they start walking again. Some even claim to have felt a hand brush against their shoulder, cold and fleeting, like a warning. Despite these stories, Clearwater High School continues its daily rhythms, students bustling between classes, laughter echoing across the courtyard, and sports teams practicing under the Florida sun. But beneath that surface of normalcy lies something older and deeper, a lingering energy that refuses to fade. The custodians still whisper prayers before locking up at night, and teachers rarely stay after dark. The few who do always make sure to keep a hallway light on, as if to offer comfort to those unseen students who never left. There is a plaque near the entrance that reads, "Dedicated to the spirit of learning." It was meant as a metaphor when it was placed there decades ago, but now some say it holds a more literal meaning that Clearwater High is home not only to the living, but also to those whose spirits are still bound to its classrooms, unable to graduate from the echoes of the past. Gainesville High School sits at the heart of the city, surrounded by oak trees draped in Spanish moss that swayed gently in the humid Florida breeze. Beneath the lively rhythm of modern classrooms and football games lies something far older, lingering, presence that refuses to fade. It's said that the oldest parts of the school, built nearly a century ago, are haunted by ghostly teachers and students who once walked the same halls. Those who stay late into the evening often speak of strange chills, unexplainable knocks echoing through empty corridors, and shadowy figures watching silently from darkened windows. The school was founded in the early 1900s. Its brick walls and tall windows a testament to the optimism of a growing city. Over the years, Gainesville High has seen countless generations pass through its doors. But with that history comes a trail of sorrow. Fires, accidents, and tragedies have marked its timeline, leaving emotional imprints that seem to echo long after the events themselves have faded from memory. The first reports of hauntings date back to the 1940s, after a mysterious fire broke out in one of the original classrooms. The blaze, though quickly contained, claimed the life of a beloved English teacher named Miss Hargrove, who was said to have been grading papers late into the night. In the aftermath, students began reporting strange occurrences in that same room. Papers would flutter on desks without a breeze, and the faint smell of smoke would sometimes drift through, even when the air was still. Teachers who used the classroom later claimed to hear soft tapping on the blackboard, as though someone were trying to get their attention. Another tragedy occurred in the 1960s, when a student collapsed during a basketball practice and never regained consciousness. The gymnasium has never been the same since. After dark, janitors claim to hear the rhythmic squeak of sneakers across the wooden floor, even when the lights are off and the doors locked. The sound of a bouncing basketball echoes faintly through the empty space, stopping only when someone steps inside to investigate. Students who take classes in the older building say the air feels different. They're thicker, colder, almost charged with an unseen electricity. One senior recalled staying after school to work on a group project. As dusk settled outside, she noticed a shadow moving along the hallway through the glass of the classroom door. Thinking it was a teacher, she opened the door, only to find the hallway completely empty. Moments later, she felt a sudden rush of cold air brush past her, strong enough to ruffle her papers and make her shiver. When she turned back toward the classroom, one of the chairs had shifted several feet from where it had been. The maintenance staff has its own share of stories. One custodian, who has worked at Gainesville High for nearly 3 decades, refuses to enter the third-floor corridor after midnight. He tells of hearing footsteps following him as he mops, always keeping the same pace but never visible. Sometimes, he says, the footsteps stop abruptly, followed by 3 slow knocks on a nearby door. When he opens it, the room is always empty, yet the temperature inside is noticeably colder. Some nights, passing drivers swear they've seen someone standing in the upper windows of the old wings, a faint silhouette outlined against the faint glow of emergency lights. These reports are frequent enough that local police have even responded to alarms triggered by motion sensors in empty rooms. But every time they arrive, the building is locked tight and no intruder can be found. Teachers, too, have their uneasy moments. One recalled arriving early one morning before sunrise to prepare for class. As she entered her room, she heard what sounded like quiet whispering coming from the back row. She turned on the lights, but the desks were empty. When she glanced toward the windows, she thought she saw a reflection of a woman standing just behind her. Shoulder a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothing, hair tied neatly in a bun. When she turned around, no one was there. Later, she discovered that her classroom had once been part of the wing destroyed by fire decades earlier. The same fire that had taken Miss Hargrove's life. Even the auditorium, where students perform plays and assemblies are held, has its share of paranormal reputation. Actors rehearsing late into the night have reported faint applause from the darkened seats or a shadowy figure standing at the back of the stage. Some have said they hear someone humming softly just before the lights flicker, the tune fading into silence when the power steadies again. Gainesville High's oldest stairwell is another focal point of strange activity. Built from polished stone and iron railings, it creaks underfoot even when no one is there. Students hurrying to class have reported seeing faint figures ascending ahead of them, shapes that vanish mid-step, as if swallowed by the air. During stormy weather, when thunder rolls and lightning flashes through the tall windows, some claim to see the faces of long-gone students reflected in the glass, their expressions solemn and watchful. The most chilling story, however, comes from the night watchman who patrols the grounds. He once described locking up the main entrance around 2 a.m. when he heard a faint bell ring from inside. The school bell system had been shut off for the night, yet the sound echoed through the hallways, a sharp, metallic tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. When he went to investigate, he found one of the classroom doors slightly ajar. Inside, the blackboard had a single word scrawled across it in chalk. Here, the chalk piece lay broken beneath it. Today, Gainesville High continues to thrive as a modern school, bustling with life and noise during the day. But when night falls and the hallways fall silent, that other side of its history awakens. Cold drafts slip beneath the doors, unseen hands knock from behind walls, and faint figures appear where they shouldn't, lingering in the glow of security lights, watching, waiting. Fort Lauderdale High School, one of Florida's oldest public schools, stands as both a symbol of education and an enduring mystery. Beneath the sounds of ringing bells and bustling students lies a darker undercurrent that has unsettled generations. Those who walked its halls after sunset tell of doors that open and close on their own, ghostly footsteps echoing across gym floors, and pale figures appearing near the staircases before vanishing into thin air. Some claim to see entire scenes from decades past, students in vintage uniforms and teachers from another time, repeating long-forgotten moments as if trapped in an endless loop. The school's history stretches back to the early 20th century, when Fort Lauderdale was little more than a quiet coastal town. The original building was smaller, made of red brick and thick concrete walls meant to withstand Florida's storms. Over the years, renovations and expansions layered modern architecture atop old foundations. But much of the original structure still remains hidden within. It is in those oldest wings, many say, that the hauntings are strongest. One story often told by staff involves the old gymnasium. Built in the 1940s, it once hosted pep rallies, basketball games, and graduation ceremonies. During a storm in the late 1950s, lightning struck the roof during a homecoming event, sparking a small fire. Though no one died, a student was severely injured, and the event left a lasting scar on the community. Decades later, custodians and night watchmen began hearing strange noises in that same gym, footsteps echoing across the polished wood floor long after the lights were turned off. The rhythmic squeak of sneakers and the faint thud of a bouncing ball often fill the empty space. When investigated, the gym remains silent, as though nothing had happened. Students who attend evening practices sometimes feel a presence behind them, watching from the bleachers. One volleyball player recalled retrieving a ball that had rolled toward the far end of the court. When she bent to pick it up, she heard a single pair of hands clap, slow, deliberate, and coming from the shadows. The lights flickered, and when she looked up, the bleachers were empty. The stairwells of Fort Lauderdale High are another source of eerie activity. The oldest set, tucked near the back of the main building, connects the lower classrooms to the upper level where older administrative offices once were. Teachers who stay late report the sound of shoes ascending and descending the steps, even when no one is there. Occasionally, a shadow appears at the landing, vague but unmistakably human in shape before dissolving into the dim hallway light. In one particularly unsettling account, a teacher was grading papers in her classroom when she heard footsteps approaching. Assuming it was a student, she looked toward the doorway just as a figure passed by, a boy in an outdated Letterman jacket. She called out, but he didn't stop. When she stepped into the hallway to follow him, he was gone. Moments later, she heard the faint echo of laughter drifting up the staircase, the kind of laughter that sounds both near and impossibly far away. The janitorial staff have their own tales, often whispered quietly during night shifts. One custodian recalled cleaning near the cafeteria when he heard the unmistakable sound of lockers slamming one after another, in perfect rhythm. Thinking it was a prank, he rushed to the hallway, but the air was still. The row of lockers stood wide open, every door swinging slightly, as though an unseen hand had just brushed past. Another chilling story comes from the auditorium, a grand, echoing space that's been the heart of countless performances. Actors rehearsing late into the evening describe cold drafts sweeping across the stage, followed by the faint murmur of voices in the seats. One group swore they saw a figure standing in the spotlight, facing the audience. When they looked again, it was gone, replaced by the faint scent of old cologne that lingered long after. Perhaps the most mysterious phenomenon involves the so-called replays. Students and staff have reported seeing scenes from the past, manifesting before their eyes, ghostly reenactments of moments that seem frozen in time. One night, a security guard making his rounds caught sight of a group of teenagers in old-fashioned clothing gathered near the courtyard. They appeared to be laughing, tossing papers, and joking with one another. As he approached, the entire group faded into mist, leaving only the rustle of palm leaves in the wind. When he checked the security footage, the area was completely empty. Historians note that the school has been relocated and rebuilt several times throughout its existence. Yet many of the materials, wood, flooring, even pieces of the original foundation, were reused in each reconstruction. Some believe that this continuity may have carried not just the physical remnants of the past, but the emotional ones as well. Generations of students have experienced triumph, heartbreak, and tragedy within those walls, and perhaps those intense memories left a lasting impression. Several psychics and paranormal investigators who have visited the campus describe the same sensations: cold drafts in sealed rooms, the feeling of being watched, and sudden drops in temperature around the staircases. One investigator claimed to have captured a faint whisper on an audio recorder saying, "We're late for class," while another reported seeing the outline of a man pacing near the gym entrance before vanishing. Despite the reports, the school continues to operate like any other. Students fill the halls during the day, teachers conduct lessons, and laughter spills across the campus. But as night falls and the final bell fades into silence, the tone shifts. The doors creak softly as if adjusting to the dark, and faint footsteps echo through the corridors that were bustling just hours earlier. Some say the spirits are simply echoes, memories burned into the architecture of the building, replaying fragments of long ago days. Others believe they are intelligent presences, lingering by choice, watching over a place that once defined their youth. Whatever the truth, Fort Lauderdale High carries more than history within its walls. It holds the essence of countless lives that have passed through it, some that moved on, and some that stayed behind, endlessly walking the halls, forever caught between the past and the present. Pensacola High School, standing proudly as one of Florida's oldest educational institutions, carries a deep sense of history within its brick walls. Founded more than a century ago, the school has weathered storms, wars, and generations of students who've come and gone. Yet, long after the final bell rings, when the hallways fall silent and the campus is left in darkness, something else stirs. Those who have lingered after hours tell of phantom voices echoing through the corridors, lights flickering in empty classrooms, and shadows moving along the walls as if guided by unseen hands. The school's age alone lends it a certain weight of presence that can be felt the moment you step through the front doors. Its architecture reflects an era when craftsmanship mattered, with tall ceilings, echoing hallways, and creaking staircases that seem to hold whispers from decades past. But it isn't just the building's old bones that inspire unease. It's what people have experienced within them. Teachers who stay late grading papers have often reported strange occurrences. One recalls sitting in her classroom one evening when she heard a voice call her name from the hallway. It wasn't loud, just a soft, clear whisper that seemed to come from right outside the door. She opened it to find the corridor empty, the fluorescent lights flickering above. A chill moved through the air, and the faint smell of sulfur drifted in, as though the building itself had exhaled something ancient. Students, to have their share of ghost stories. Generations have passed them down, like folklore, adding details each year, but always circling back to the same themes: mysterious voices, cold drafts, and shadows that move against the light. The most common experiences happen near the old science labs, where experiments once filled the air with the scent of chemicals and electric charge. These rooms, though renovated, still feel charged with something invisible. Many students claim to feel sudden temperature drops there, even on hot days when the air conditioning isn't running. Beakers rattle on shelves, and faint taps sound from the counters when no one is near. One former lab assistant tells a story that has become something of local legend. During a late-night cleanup after a school event, he was collecting supplies when the lights flickered and went out completely. In the dark, he heard the faint sound of a pencil scratching across paper, as though someone were taking notes. When the emergency lights came back on, he found a message written in chalk on the blackboard: 2 words. Faint but clear. Stay away. The auditorium is another place where the paranormal seems to linger. Built in the 1930s, it has hosted countless assemblies, performances, and graduations. But when the stage lights dim and the seats are empty, the space transforms into something eerie. Custodians who lock up at night say they hear footsteps pacing across the stage, followed by the creak of curtains shifting on their own. Sometimes, a low murmur of conversation rises from the audience seats, fading as suddenly as it begins. One staff member swears he once saw a shadowy figure standing in the spotlight, motionless, as though waiting for a cue that never came. When he blinked, it was gone. The oldest part of the school and original wing that survived multiple hurricanes seems to harbor the most intense energy. It's where the flickering lights are most common, where the temperature drops sharply for no reason, and where people report hearing phantom names being called. These voices don't always sound menacing. Sometimes they call softly, almost pleadingly, as if searching for someone who never answered. Teachers walking these halls alone have said they've heard the faint echo of their own names whispered back to them from the darkness. There are stories of a tragedy, too, though details vary. Some claim that during the 1920s, a fire broke out in one of the classrooms, trapping several students inside before help arrived. Records are scarce, and official archives make no mention of fatalities. But locals insist something happens, something the school would rather forget. Whether or not that story is true, many believe it explains the restless energy in the building. One particularly chilling encounter occurred in the 1980s, when a group of drama students stayed late rehearsing a play. As they practiced a scene, the stage lights began to flicker in rhythm, almost as if responding to their dialogue. Then, all at once, the lights went out completely. In the darkness, one of the students screamed. She claimed to have seen a figure standing just behind the curtain, tall and unmoving. When the power returned moments later, there was no one there, but the heavy velvet curtain swayed as though disturbed by an unseen breeze. Security guards often patrol the grounds at night, and even they've come to dread certain areas. The camera footage sometimes shows lights turning on in classrooms that should be locked, or doors slowly swinging open as if pushed by invisible hands. In one recording, a faint human-shaped shadow appears near the main staircase, climbing step by step before vanishing halfway up. Attempts to debunk these occurrences, checking wiring, air pressure, and mechanical faults have offered no clear explanation. During stormy weather, when thunder rolls in from the Gulf and rain lashes against the windows, the activity seems to intensify. The hallways fill with a strange, electric energy, and people say they hear faint voices rising with the storm, laughter, chatter, even a bell ringing somewhere deep inside the building, though no such bell exists anymore. Despite the legends, Pensacola High continues to function as a thriving school, full of students, teachers, and the daily rhythm of life. Yet, everyone who spends time there knows its reputation. They've all heard the stories. Some treat them as harmless fun, while others carry a quiet sense of unease, glancing over their shoulders when the lights flicker or a door creaks unexpectedly. For those who dare to walk the halls after midnight, the experience can feel otherworldly. The polished floors seem to hum beneath their feet, as if alive with memory. Shadows gather near the corners, stretching and twisting into strange shapes. The faint scent of chalk and old books lingers in the air. Then, just when the silence feels too deep, a voice may whisper a name that no one has spoken in years. St. Petersburg High School, one of Florida's oldest public schools, holds more than just memories of generations of students. It holds whispers of the past that seem to refuse to fade. The grand brick structure, with its arched windows and vintage hallways, has long been a landmark of the city. But for those who walk its corridors late at night, the building feels far from empty. There's a heavy stillness that settles over the halls, a silence that seems to listen, waiting for something or someone to stir. Custodians, teachers, and even students who stayed late for after-school activities all speak of the same unnerving sensations. Ghostly figures standing by lockers, chairs scraping across classroom floors without reason, and doors slamming shut as if pushed by unseen hands. Many describe an unmistakable sense of being watched, a feeling that grows stronger the longer one lingers. It often begins in the oldest wing of the building, the section that dates back to the early 1900s. Teachers who work late grading papers say they hear the faint echo of footsteps in the hallway, the steady rhythm of shoes clicking against the linoleum. When they look, the corridor is empty, lit only by the flickering glow of fluorescent lights. Some have even seen the shadow of a student, a faint, translucent figure, passing from one locker to another, only to vanish when approached. One night, a security guard making his rounds found the hallway doors near the gym standing wide open. He swore he had locked them earlier. As he went to close them, he heard laughter echo from the locker area, the sound of teenagers joking and running, though the entire building was supposed to be empty. When he turned the corner, the laughter stopped. Every locker door stood still, except one that slowly creaked shut on its own. The sound was soft but deliberate, and it made him freeze. He left that hallway quickly and never volunteered for the night shift again. Teachers tell of chairs moving across classrooms, their legs dragging along the tile floor. In one art room, a teacher returned after the weekend to find all the chairs stacked neatly in the center of the room. Something no student had done, and something she hadn't ordered. She checked the security footage, but the camera showed only static during the hours when the rearrangement must have happened. Students claim the auditorium is the most haunted part of St. Petersburg High, long before it became a theater for plays and assemblies. It was used for school dances and events in the 1930s and 1940s. Some say a fire once broke out backstage decades ago, taking the life of a young student who was helping with set design, though no official records confirm this. Generations of students swear that a ghostly figure can be seen sitting in the back row during rehearsals, a pale silhouette that fades when the stage lights come on. Actors rehearse their lines and sometimes hear someone clapping softly in the dark, though no one is there. A music teacher who has worked there for over 20 years claims that the piano in the corner of the auditorium occasionally plays a few notes late at night. The sound isn't random, it's the same melody, a few gentle keys, played as though someone is testing the tune. When he checks, the bench is empty, but the keys are still moving slightly, as if touched by invisible fingers. Even the staircases seem to hold energy from the past. Several students report seeing faint outlines of people ascending or descending, dressed in outdated clothing from decades long gone. The figures never look up, never speak, and vanish midway down the stairs. Teachers initially dismissed the stories as overactive imaginations, but one janitor confirmed seeing the same thing, a young girl in a long skirt, carrying books in her arms, disappearing near the third step. One of the most unsettling reports comes from the science wing. It said that, during the 1960s, an unfortunate accident in one of the chemistry labs injured several students. Since then, the temperature in that area often drops unexpectedly. Students walking past those rooms report feeling sudden chills, as if a cold hand had brushed across their skin. Some say they hear faint knocking sounds from inside the lab when the doors are locked. At night, when the wind moves through the old vents and the fluorescent lights hum overhead, The building feels alive in a way that has nothing to do with human presence. The school's age seems to amplify the strange occurrences. Teachers passing through in the early morning hours hear whispers, indistinct voices calling their names. Others find chalkboard writing that wasn't there before. Single words, sometimes initials, written in faint white strokes that disappear the next day. Local historians have tried to trace the origins of these hauntings. Some point to the land itself, which once held temporary housing for workers during the early development of St. Petersburg. Others think it's simply the weight of memory, the collective energy of generations of students, teachers, and events that have passed through the school. Whatever the cause, the experiences remain eerily consistent across decades. Even today, as the school continues to modernize, the ghostly reputation endures. Staff who work late avoid certain hallways. Substitute teachers sometimes request not to be assigned to older classrooms. And every graduating class passes down the same whispered advice. If you hear footsteps behind you after dark, don't turn around. Just keep walking. For the people of St. Petersburg, the high school's hauntings are as much a part of its history as its academic legacy. The stories are retold each year, blending nostalgia with fear. Some former students return decades later, standing before the brick building with a strange fondness, remembering both the laughter of their youth and the shadows that seemed to watch from the corners. Daytona Beach High School, a landmark in the city renowned for its rich history and coastal charm, harbors secrets that most passers-by never notice. By day, it's a bustling place filled with the chatter of students, the slam of locker doors, and the hum of classroom lessons. By night, however, the atmosphere changes entirely. Teachers, custodians, and occasional late-night visitors speak of ghostly students and teachers who roam the halls long after the school is empty. Whispers echo through the corridors, footsteps fall where no one walks, and invisible hands tap shoulders, startling anyone who lingers too long in the older wings. The school itself has stood for nearly a century, a mixture of old brick architecture and modern additions. Its long hallways, towering ceilings, and vast gymnasium carry the weight of countless memories. The oldest sections, particularly near the library and gymnasium, are reported to be the most active. Many who have walked these corridors after hours claim the air feels charged, heavy with a presence just beyond sight. It is in these areas that the most vivid paranormal experiences occur. Library staff, in particular, have noted a persistent series of strange events. Books sometimes fall from shelves with no explanation, and pages turn on their own, as if an invisible reader is examining them. Students who have stayed late for study sessions recount feeling a sudden tap on the shoulder, only to turn and find no one there. In some instances, they hear a soft whisper of their names or the sound of footsteps moving across the polished floor. One librarian reported seeing a shadow in the shape of a young girl pass silently behind the stacks, vanishing before she could react. The gymnasium, once home to countless basketball games, assemblies, and school dances, also has a long history of paranormal reports. Custodians and coaches, staying late after practice, describe hearing the squeak of sneakers and the echo of bouncing basketballs, even when the gym is empty. Some have seen translucent figures near the bleachers, seemingly reenacting moments from decades past. One evening, a coach noticed a group of students in old-fashioned uniforms performing drills in perfect formation. He blinked, and they had vanished, leaving only the faint sound of shoes scraping the wood floor behind him. Teachers who have remained late for grading or preparing lessons have shared eerie stories about the hallways. Doors swing open or shut without cause, and lights flicker even when electrical systems are fully functional. Some report hearing teachers' voices from classrooms that have been empty for years, or catching glimpses of figures in hallways that disappear when approached. These incidents are often accompanied by sudden chills, the air feeling noticeably colder in certain areas, despite the Florida heat. One particularly unsettling account came from a student assistant in the science wing. Late one night, as she organized lab equipment, she felt a light tap on her shoulder. Turning quickly, she found no one behind her. Moments later, a test tube rolled across the counter, stopping at her feet. She felt a chill in the air and swore she saw a figure standing just outside the door. A boy in an outdated uniform, looking as though he had stepped out of the past. The next day, she found no evidence of anyone entering the wing, and the video surveillance captured nothing unusual. Even the stairwells carry a reputation for strange phenomena. Students have reported shadows moving up and down steps when no one else is in sight. Teachers who pass through alone late at night sometimes hear faint laughter echoing off the walls, or the soft shuffle of feet pacing above them. One janitor described a shadowy figure standing at the landing, its face indistinct, before dissolving into the darkness. Others claim the figures reenact moments from school life long ago, students moving between classrooms, a teacher tapping chalk against a board, the soft hum of a bell that no longer rings. The school auditorium is no exception. Built in the 1920s and expanded over the years, it has been the center of school performances and assemblies. Staff staying late for rehearsal report hearing quiet murmurs of dialogue, footsteps behind the stage, or the faint sound of chairs moving in the audience. One drama teacher recounted seeing a shadow standing near the center of the stage, watching silently as students performed. When she blinked, the figure vanished. Occasionally, the piano in the corner plays a note on its own, a gentle sound that fades almost as soon as it begins. Histories and local legends offer potential explanations for these occurrences. Daytona Beach High has experienced accidents and tragedies over its long existence, from minor fires and lab mishaps to falls and illnesses. Some believe that these events left an imprint, a residue of emotion and memory embedded within the building itself. Others think the spirits may be of former students and faculty, bound to the school by a sense of unfinished business or attachment to the place that shaped their lives. Visitors often describe an overarching sense of unease when exploring the older wings at night. The air grows heavy, sounds carry strangely, and even familiar hallways feel different. Those sensitive to paranormal energy may feel a pressure on their shoulders or hear a faint whisper behind them. The more one walks through the library, gym, or auditorium, the stronger the sensation that unseen eyes are watching, tracking each step. Despite the unsettling reports, Daytona Beach High School continues to function as a thriving educational institution. Students fill the hallways with energy and laughter, teachers conduct lessons, and sports teams practice under the Florida sun. Yet, the stories endure, passed down from one generation to the next. Late-night custodians, after-school tutors, and dedicated students are often the ones who witness the unexplained firsthand. Ocala High School, nestled in the heart of Florida's horse country, is more than just an institution of learning. Its brick walls, tall windows, and winding corridors hold echoes of the past that refuse to fade. Students, teachers, and staff have long whispered about strange occurrences that cannot be explained, shadowy figures glimpsed in classrooms, footsteps echoing through empty halls, and doors swinging open as if moved by unseen hands. In certain rooms, particularly the oldest classrooms and science labs, visitors have reported the unmistakable sound of chalk scratching across blackboards, even when the rooms are completely vacant. The school's history stretches back nearly a century, making it one of the oldest in the region. Over the decades, generations of students have walked its halls, celebrated victories, endured losses, and left memories that linger in subtle ways. Tragedies and accidents, both minor and severe, have contributed to the growing lore of paranormal activity. Some of the earliest reports date to the 1940s, when the school underwent renovations to expand its capacity. Workers and teachers reported strange noises, footsteps echoing across newly installed floors, doors swinging without cause, and voices calling names from empty classrooms. At first, these incidents were dismissed as the natural settling of an old building, but the activity persisted, growing more frequent with time. One of the most notorious areas is the oldest wing of the school. Teachers who stay late preparing lessons or grading papers often speak of the hallways taking on an eerie quality. A classroom that sits at the end of a long corridor is said to be particularly active. Lights flicker without warning, chairs move slightly even on smooth floors, and the faint outline of a figure has been seen standing by the window, watching silently before vanishing into the shadows. Students who have been in that classroom after hours report feeling the unmistakable sensation of being observed, even when they are alone. The science labs, too, have their share of spectral activity. These rooms, once filled with the scent of chemicals and the hum of experiments, now seem to hold an invisible presence. Teachers and students alike have described sudden drops in temperature, accompanied by the eerie sound of footsteps pacing across the tile floor. In some instances, chalk has been heard scratching against the blackboard, forming shapes or letters that vanish before anyone can record them. One teacher recounted a late-night session when she turned around to see a faint silhouette at the board, holding a piece of chalk as if writing notes. When she blinked, the figure was gone, leaving only the lingering echo of scratching in the silent room. The gymnasium, with its polished wooden floors and high ceilings, is another hotspot for unexplained activity. Custodians working late often hear the squeak of sneakers across the floor or the faint bounce of a basketball, yet no one is present. On several occasions, doors leading to the locker rooms have swung open and shut on their own, and lights have flickered in patterns that suggest movement rather than electrical failure. Students who practice late into the evening have sometimes reported seeing figures performing drills in perfect formation, only for them to disappear when approached. Even the stairwells and hallways connecting classrooms have been sites of strange events. Shadowy figures are frequently reported moving just out of the corner of the eye, and the sound of footsteps pacing above or below has startled those working late. Doors that were securely closed in the morning may be found wide open in the evening, as if someone has walked through. One janitor described a chilling experience. While making his rounds at midnight, he heard a faint knocking from a classroom door. When he approached, the door swung open by itself, and the hallway felt icy cold, even in the middle of summer. No one was inside, and all the windows were shut. Library areas are not immune to these disturbances. Late-night study sessions have ended abruptly when students felt a tap on the shoulder, followed by the subtle shifting of books on nearby shelves. One student reported seeing a shadow pass between the stacks, moving with purpose, but leaving no physical trace. The sensation of unseen eyes watching is frequently described in these areas, leaving even the bravest students uneasy. Historians and local residents suggest that the paranormal activity at Ocala High may stem from its long history and the emotional residue left behind by generations of students and teachers. Some tragedies, accidents, and sudden deaths over the years are believed to have left echoes in the building, which now manifests in subtle but unmistakable ways. Others claim that the school's very architecture with its aged bricks, high ceilings, and narrow corridors provides a conduit for residual energy, a stage where memories of the past continue to play out. Security guards, who patrol the building at night, often report the most consistent occurrences. They have captured on camera doors opening without cause, lights flickering in vacant rooms, and faint figures moving along hallways. One guard swears he saw a figure at the end of a corridor, its form translucent and shifting, before disappearing behind a classroom door. Audio recordings have picked up faint whispers, the sound of soft footsteps, and even the scraping of chalk on a board. While skeptics dismiss these recordings as anomalies, those familiar with the building insist they are evidence of a lingering presence. Despite these unsettling experiences, Ocala High continues to operate as a thriving educational institution. During the day, students rush through the hallways. Teachers deliver lessons, and sports teams practice on the courts and fields. But as the final bell rings and the building empties, the older wings awaken in a different way. The shadows return to their corners, footsteps echo down the empty corridors, and the sound of chalk scratching resumes on boards long abandoned. Tallahassee High School, one of Florida's oldest and most historic educational institutions, has long been a place where the past seems to linger alongside the present. By day, it is alive with the sounds of students rushing through hallways, bells ringing, and teachers guiding lessons. By night, however, the atmosphere changes dramatically. Those who remain in the building after hours speak of sudden cold spots, whispers echoing down empty corridors, and ghostly apparitions appearing along the stairwells. The school's long history, combined with its old architecture, has made it a hotspot for unexplained activity that continues to capture the curiosity and fear of staff, students, and visitors alike. The building itself, constructed in the early 20th century, has seen generations of students pass through its doors. Its brick facade, tall windows, and echoing hallways hold decades of memories, both ordinary and tragic. Many of the paranormal reports center on the oldest wings, where the classrooms have high ceilings, narrow corridors, and wooden floors that creak with even the slightest step. Witnesses often describe a tangible feeling of being watched, an invisible presence that seems to follow them as they move from room to room. One of the most frequently reported phenomena occurs along the stairwells. Staff members who remain late at night have told of shadowy figures moving up and down the steps. Teachers have reported seeing students in old-fashioned uniforms, walking silently, their footsteps echoing but their presence fading when approached. Sometimes the figures stop at a landing, turning as if to observe the hallway, before vanishing into thin air. The hallways themselves are often filled with whispers that seem to have no source. Custodians, walking alone during night shifts, have recounted hearing murmured voices calling out names or repeating phrases from long ago. One night, a janitor passing through the East Wing heard the unmistakable laughter of children, echoing from a classroom that had been empty for hours. When he entered the room, it was dark and silent, yet the sound persisted for several moments, fading only when he left the area. Sudden cold spots are another hallmark of the school's spectral activity. Students who have stayed late for tutoring sessions or extra practice have often remarked on the chilling sensation of icy air brushing past them, even when the temperature outside is warm. In certain classrooms, the temperature can drop abruptly, leaving them shivering despite wearing jackets. Teachers have also felt these sudden chills, sometimes accompanied by the faint sound of furniture moving slightly on its own or papers rustling without explanation. One of the most unsettling experiences has been reported in the school's auditorium. Built in the 1920s and renovated several times since, it has hosted countless assemblies, plays, and concerts. When rehearsals extend into the evening, performers have described hearing footsteps pacing the stage and whispers drifting from the rows of empty seats. Some claim to have seen the shadow of a teacher or student standing near the front, observing the performance. When attention is focused, the figure vanishes, leaving only the echo of distant voices or the subtle movement of a curtain. The library, another area with frequent activity, seems to hold a concentrated presence. Books occasionally fall from shelves for no apparent reason, and students studying late report the sensation of an unseen hand tapping their shoulder. Faint figures have been seen moving between the stacks, often disappearing before anyone can get a closer look. Chalkboards in older classrooms have also been known to produce faint scratching sounds, as if someone is writing while no one is present. These sounds sometimes form letters or simple shapes that vanish by the next day. Several accounts involve replays of the past. Witnesses describe seeing ghostly students walking in groups, reenacting activities from decades ago, moving between classrooms, climbing the stairs, or gathering near lockers. Teachers who have stayed late report hearing voices, giving instructions or lessons long since forgotten. It is as though fragments of history are trapped within the building, playing out over and over for anyone sensitive enough to notice. The school's history includes stories of accidents and personal tragedies, though official records are scarce. Some believe that these events left an imprint, a kind of emotional residue that continues to manifest as paranormal activity. Others suggest that the architecture itself, the aged wood, brick walls, and high ceilings amplifies subtle sounds and movements, giving life to what might otherwise be dismissed as imagination. Whatever the cause, the experiences at Tallahassee High are consistent enough to be recognized by multiple generations of staff and students. Security personnel who patrolled the building at night often witnessed the most frequent activity. Cameras sometimes capture faint figures moving through hallways or stairwells, lights turning on and off without cause, and objects shifting in rooms that are supposed to be empty. Audio recordings have occasionally captured whispers, soft footsteps, or the creak of furniture being moved. all without explanation. Attempts to explain the occurrences through mechanical or electrical faults have often failed, leaving many convinced that the school is genuinely haunted. Despite the ghostly reports, Tallahassee High continues to function as a vibrant educational institution. Students attend classes, sports teams practice on the fields, and teachers conduct lessons throughout the day. But once the last bell rings and the building empties, the atmosphere changes. The hallways grow quiet, yet the whispers and footsteps begin anew. Shadowy figures reappear along stairwells, doors swing open, and cold drafts brush against the skin of anyone remaining inside. Lakeland High School, a landmark in the heart of Central Florida, has stood for generations as a center of learning, tradition, and community. But beyond the laughter of students, the echo of sneakers on the hallways, and the hum of everyday school life, the building holds secrets that few dare to confront. For decades, reports have emerged of ghostly figures moving silently between classrooms, lights flickering without warning, and cold drafts appearing in areas where no doors or windows are open. Many who have spent time in the older wings of the school believe that the spirits of past students linger, replaying fragments of their daily routines, forever trapped in the building they once called home. The school's architecture, with its long hallways, high ceilings, and brick-and-mortar construction, seems to amplify these experiences. Teachers and staff who remain after the final bell have often described the unsettling sensation of being watched, even when alone. Shadows have been glimpsed at the end of hallways, figures pausing at lockers, and translucent students walking as though moving through a scene long forgotten by the living. These figures, though fleeting, leave a lasting impression on anyone who encounters them. A sense that the building carries memory in every corner. One of the most frequently reported areas of activity is the oldest wing, where classrooms dating back to the school's early years still remain in use. Teachers preparing lessons late at night have described lights flickering above their heads, even when all electrical systems are fully functional. Doors to classrooms will swing open or close without cause, and chairs occasionally shift across the floor as if an invisible student has moved them. In some cases, the chalkboards themselves appear to write without intervention, faint lines or letters appearing before fading into nothing. Students, too, have shared experiences that have become local lore. One former student recounted staying after school to finish a project in the art room. She was placing supplies on a table when she felt a cold draft pass over her shoulder. When she looked up, she noticed a faint outline of a figure standing in the doorway. The figure, resembling a teenager from decades past, lingered for a moment before fading into the shadows. She later learned that the classroom had been in continuous use for nearly 60 years, and several students had reported similar sightings in the same room. The gymnasium is another hotspot for paranormal activity. Coaches and custodians staying late report hearing the squeak of sneakers on the polished wooden floor, the bounce of basketballs, or faint voices echoing from the bleachers, even when no one is present. Some have claimed to see figures performing drills or walking in perfect formation, only to disappear when approached. Lights in the gym sometimes flicker rhythmically, almost as though responding to unseen activity. The sense of presence in these moments is so strong that even seasoned staff describe the hair on the back of their necks rising and a sudden chill in the air. Hallways connecting classrooms also hold their share of strange phenomena. Late-night custodians have reported hearing footsteps pacing behind them, only to find empty corridors when they turn. Doors that were securely closed in the morning are sometimes found ajar in the evening. Shadows, moving just at the edge of vision, seem to pass through walls or corners, leaving observers with the unmistakable feeling of being followed. Some teachers have said they can hear faint murmurs of conversation, the sound of locker doors opening and closing, and the shuffle of books being carried, even though the hallways are completely empty. The library, filled with decades of books and historical documents, is another area where paranormal experiences are frequently reported. Students studying late often sense an unseen presence nearby, accompanied by the sudden movement of books on shelves, or the faint tapping of someone pacing between the stacks. A few have reported seeing ghostly figures gliding silently past the reading tables, their outlines faint yet discernible. The whispers in the library are described as soft and indistinct, but the sense of being observed is almost palpable. Many believe that the hauntings at Lakeland High stem from its long history and the lives that passed through it. Tragedies, accidents, and personal losses over the decades may have left an imprint on the building itself, a residual energy that plays out in the form of ghostly activity. Others suggest that the architecture, with its old wood, brick walls, and echoing hallways, acts as a conduit for lingering memories, allowing scenes from the past to repeat endlessly. Security staff working night shifts often witness some of the most vivid activity. Cameras have occasionally recorded faint figures moving in hallways where no one should be. Lights turn on or off without explanation, and objects sometimes shift without human interaction. Audio recordings have captured faint whispers, footsteps, or the soft dragging of chairs across classroom floors. Attempts to attribute these occurrences to mechanical faults or human error have frequently failed, leaving staff convinced that something beyond the ordinary inhabits the building. Despite these ghostly reports, Lakeland High continues to function as a vibrant educational institution. Students fill the classrooms, teachers guide lessons, and sports teams practice on the fields and courts. Yet, once the last bell rings and the hallways fall silent, the atmosphere changes. Shadows move between rooms, cold drafts brush along empty corridors, and the faint sound of footsteps echoes off the polished floors. The building seems alive with memory, replaying the routines of students long gone. Fort Myers High School, a historic educational institution in the heart of Southwest Florida, is known for its long-standing academic legacy, but it is also a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Long after the final bell rings and the hallways empty, staff and occasional visitors have reported eerie phenomena that cannot be explained. Phantom students are said to roam the corridors at night, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, doors slamming with no visible cause, and shadowy figures vanishing into classrooms long abandoned. Some witnesses have even seen spectral teachers, chalk in hand, writing on blackboards as if delivering a lesson to an unseen class. The school's architecture, with its combination of modern wings and older brick buildings, provides the perfect setting for these mysterious occurrences. The oldest parts of the building, constructed decades ago, seem to be the epicenter of the paranormal activity. Teachers and custodians, staying late, often describe the hallways taking on an almost oppressive stillness, broken only by sounds that should not exist. The soft click of footsteps, the swish of lockers opening and closing, and occasional distant laughter echoing from unseen sources. The feeling of being watched is frequently reported, sometimes growing so intense that even the bravest staff are compelled to leave. One of the most active areas is the science wing, where classrooms with long-used blackboards and tall windows often become the stage for ghostly events. Teachers grading papers or preparing lessons after hours have reported faint chalk marks appearing on the boards, as if an invisible hand were demonstrating a lesson long forgotten. Students who have ventured into the wing alone have recounted seeing a figure at the front of the room, its form translucent, writing equations or notes before disappearing without a trace. Often, these experiences are accompanied by sudden cold drafts, the air turning icy despite the warm Florida climate. The gymnasium is another hotspot for paranormal activity. Custodians who work late have heard the unmistakable squeak of sneakers across the polished floors, the bounce of imaginary basketballs, and the shuffle of feet along the bleachers. On more than one occasion, lights have flickered or dimmed inexplicably, and doors to locker rooms or storage areas have opened and closed without warning. Students practicing in the evening have sometimes seen shadows moving in formation across the court, as though old basketball teams are replaying drills from decades past. The experience can be so vivid that witnesses report feeling the presence of others, even when no one else is physically present. Hallways connecting classrooms have also seen frequent activity. Security staff making their nightly rounds describe hearing footsteps following them. Yet, when they turn, The corridors are empty. Doors previously locked may be found ajar moments later, and lockers sometimes rattle as though someone is attempting to open them. Shadows, glimpsed from the corner of an eye, appear to pass between walls or disappear into classrooms, leaving observers with a lingering sense of unease. Some teachers have reported hearing faint murmurs of conversation, the sound of chairs scraping the floors, and soft footsteps echoing in empty rooms, all occurring when the hallways should be completely silent. The auditorium, with its high ceilings and vintage stage, is also a common sight for ghostly sightings. Staff staying late for rehearsals have heard faint clapping or the scuff of shoes across the stage, even when no one else is present. Some claim to have seen a shadowy figure standing near the stage curtains, watching silently before fading into darkness. The presence is often accompanied by the soft creak of floorboards and the subtle movement of objects, such as chairs or props, shifting without explanation. Even the library, with its rows of books and study tables, is not immune. Students who have remained late for research or tutoring sessions report the sensation of being observed, accompanied by the gentle movement of books on shelves. Shadowy figures have been seen gliding past the tables, vanishing before anyone can approach. Occasionally, whispers drift through the stacks in distinct voices, repeating names or sentences. Always fleeting, always just beyond understanding. Historians and locals suggest that the school's long history may contribute to the paranormal phenomena. Over the decades, it has seen countless generations of students, teachers, and staff pass through its halls. Accidents, personal tragedies, and untimely deaths may have left emotional echoes embedded within the building itself. Others think that the architecture, the creaking wood, brick walls, and narrow corridors amplifies ordinary sounds and movements, creating experiences that appear supernatural. Security personnel and night staff often report the most consistent activity. Cameras have occasionally recorded fleeting figures moving along hallways or stairwells, lights turning on and off without cause, and doors swinging as if pushed by invisible hands. Audio recordings sometimes capture faint whispers, the drag of furniture, or footsteps pacing rooms with no occupants. While skeptics attempt to dismiss these incidents as electrical malfunctions or illusions, those who experience them firsthand insist that Fort Myers High is a building with a presence all its own. Despite these eerie occurrences, Fort Myers High continues to operate as a vibrant educational institution. Students fill classrooms during the day, teachers conduct lessons, and sports teams practice under the Florida sun. Yet, once the final bell rings and the hallways empty, the atmosphere shifts. Phantom students begin their silent wanderings. Ghostly teachers return to chalkboards, and doors move as though guided by unseen hands. Cold drafts sweep through empty corridors. Footsteps echo, and shadows appear where no living person stands. West Palm Beach High School, a storied institution in the heart of Florida's Palm Beach County, is known for its rich history, sprawling campus, and decades of educational legacy. Yet beneath the surface of its everyday bustle, the school holds secrets that many prefer to whisper rather than speak aloud. Visitors, staff, and students have long reported unsettling experiences in the building's older, long-abandoned wings. Whispers echo through empty corridors, ghostly laughter drifts from unseen corners, and cold drafts sweep through rooms where no doors or windows are open. Shadowy figures are frequently glimpsed moving along hallways, only to vanish when approached, leaving a lingering sense of unease that has persisted for generations. The school's architecture, a blend of early 20th century brick construction and more modern additions, creates an environment where sounds carry and shadows play tricks on the eye. The oldest sections, particularly the wings, no longer in regular use, are the epicenter of paranormal activity. Teachers who have stayed late preparing lessons or grading papers describe hallways filled with an almost tangible tension, broken only by inexplicable sounds, the soft click of footsteps, the swish of lockers opening, or the faint hum of voices just beyond hearing. Many report the unnerving sensation of being watched, a presence so palpable that even seasoned staff cannot ignore it. One of the most frequently mentioned phenomena occurs in the long-abandoned classrooms of the Eastern Wing. Here, Figures resembling students from decades past have been observed walking silently between desks. Witnesses describe these forms as faint, almost translucent, moving with purpose yet vanishing before anyone can get a closer look. On some occasions, faint giggles or whispers can be heard, though no one is physically present. Teachers and custodians alike have felt the chilling sensation of an invisible hand brushing their shoulder or tapping lightly on the back as they navigate these empty rooms. The hallways themselves are rife with activity after hours. Security staff making nightly rounds often report hearing footsteps pacing behind them, only to find the corridor empty when they turn. Doors that were securely closed can swing open suddenly, and lights sometimes flicker in patterns that suggest movement, not malfunction. Shadowy figures have been glimpsed moving just out of the corner of the eye, disappearing into stairwells or classrooms before anyone can investigate. One custodian recalled walking down the east wing at midnight when he saw a dark figure standing near a window. As he approached, the figure faded, leaving only the echo of his own heartbeat and the cold draft that swept through the hall. The gymnasium, though still in use, is no stranger to strange occurrences. Coaches and custodians working late have reported hearing the squeak of sneakers on the polished wood floor, the thud of basketballs bouncing, and even faint cheers from empty bleachers. Some have seen shadows of players practicing drills or moving through the space, only for the figures to vanish when observed directly. Lights in the gym sometimes flicker inexplicably, adding to the eerie ambience. Many who have witnessed these phenomena describe an unmistakable feeling of another presence, watching, pacing, or replaying routines from long ago. Even the library, a place meant for study and quiet reflection, has its own spectral reputation. Students staying late to research or complete assignments report a persistent feeling of being observed. Books occasionally fall from shelves without cause, and shadows have been seen gliding between stacks before disappearing entirely. Faint whispers drift through the room, sometimes calling out names or phrases, as if echoes of students who once studied there are reliving their routines. In older classrooms, the sound of chalk scratching against blackboards has been reported, forming letters or simple shapes that vanish before anyone can document them. Auditoriums and stage areas, where assemblies and performances have taken place for decades, are often the stage for ghostly encounters. Staff remaining after rehearsals have described hearing footsteps across the stage, chairs moving slightly, or the faint scuff of shoes in the empty seating area. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen near the stage curtains, watching silently as though awaiting a performance that no living person can see. On several occasions, the piano in the corner of the auditorium has played single, faint notes without anyone touching the keys. A chilling yet mesmerizing sound that lingers in the otherwise silent building. Historians and longtime residents suggest that the hauntings may be connected to the school's long and sometimes tumultuous history. Decades of student life, accidents, personal tragedies, and sudden deaths could have left residual energy embedded within the walls. Others theorize that the school's architecture, the creaking floors, brick walls, and narrow corridors acts as a natural amplifier for ordinary sounds, turning them into experiences that appear paranormal. Security personnel and night staff often witness the most vivid activity. Cameras occasionally capture fleeting figures moving along hallways or stairwells. Lights turn on or off without explanation. Doors swing as though pushed by unseen hands, and faint whispers are recorded in audio systems. Even when skeptical observers attempt to rationalize these incidents, the consistency and frequency of reports suggest something beyond the ordinary resides within the building. Despite the haunted reputation, West Palm Beach High continues to function as a thriving educational institution. Students fill the hallways during the day, teachers conduct lessons, and sports teams practice on the fields and in the gyms. But once the last bell rings and the campus empties, the atmosphere shifts. Shadows move silently through abandoned wings, whispers echo down hallways, and cold drafts brush along corridors where no doors or windows are open. The building seems alive with memory, replaying fragments of school life from decades past. Boca Raton High School, a historic educational institution nestled in the heart of South Florida, is known for its academic programs and vibrant student life. Yet beneath the hum of daily activity lies a hidden side, one that is far less understood and considerably more unsettling. For decades, staff, students, and occasional visitors have reported strange occurrences within the building's older wings, lights flickering in empty classrooms, chairs moving on their own, and phantom voices calling out the names of students long gone. The atmosphere in these areas is often described as heavy and oppressive, as if the past is refusing to stay buried, replaying moments long since past. The school's oldest hallways, lined with brick walls and narrow corridors, are the epicenter of much of this activity. Teachers and custodians who remain late after the final bell often recount experiences that defy explanation. Footsteps echo through hallways where no one is present. Doors swing open or shut without a breeze, and shadows are glimpsed at the edge of vision, only to vanish when approached. Some witnesses describe the feeling of being watched, a sensation so intense that it sends chills down the spine and leaves an unmistakable impression that the building itself is alive with memory. One particularly active area is the North Wing, home to classrooms that date back to the school's earliest decades. Staff members, grading papers or preparing lessons late into the evening, have reported lights flickering above their heads, often in rhythmic patterns that suggest movement rather than electrical failure. Chairs shift slightly on their own, as if an invisible hand has nudged them, and faint chalk marks occasionally appear on blackboards without explanation. Some teachers have seen ghostly figures at the front of the classroom, chalk in hand, poised as if instructing a class that has long since departed. These figures are described as translucent, with indistinct features, yet their presence is undeniably tangible. Students, too, have recounted unnerving experiences. One former student, staying late to finish a project in the library, felt a cold draft brush past her shoulders, followed by the soft sound of whispered names. She turned, expecting to see a classmate, only to find the stacks empty. Later, she noticed a chair had moved slightly, even though no one else had been in the room. Stories like hers are common, especially in the older wings of the school, where generations of students once studied. Witnesses often describe seeing shadowy forms gliding past windows or standing at the edge of classrooms before vanishing into the darkness. The gymnasium is another location where paranormal activity has been reported. Custodians and coaches who work late often hear the squeak of sneakers across polished wooden floors, the faint bounce of basketballs, or the shuffle of footsteps on the bleachers, even when no one is present. Shadows are sometimes seen moving in formation, as if an invisible team is practicing drills. Lights in the gym occasionally flicker in patterns that mirror these movements, heightening the sense that unseen figures are performing routines from decades past. Many witnesses describe a tangible presence, an invisible energy that fills the space and responds to their movements, leaving them with an eerie awareness of being watched. Even the hallways connecting classrooms hold their own share of unexplained phenomena. Late-night security staff have described the unsettling experience of footsteps following them down corridors, only to find empty halls when they look back. Doors that were securely closed may be found open moments later, and lockers sometimes rattle as if someone is attempting to access them. Shadowy figures are frequently glimpsed moving just out of sight, disappearing around corners or into classrooms before anyone can investigate. Faint murmurs, soft laughter, and whispered conversations often accompany these sightings, contributing to a persistent feeling of unease. The library, a repository of decades of student life and study, is particularly active. Students staying late report the sensation of being observed, accompanied by subtle movements of books on shelves or chairs shifting slightly across the floor. Ghostly figures have been seen gliding past the tables, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Whispers often drift from the shelves, faint yet distinct, occasionally calling out names or repeating fragments of long-forgotten conversations. These auditory experiences leave a lasting impression, as if the memories of former students continue to replay themselves within the space. Auditoriums and stage areas are no strangers to spectral sightings either. Staff members who remain after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps across the stage, faint applause from empty seating areas, and the subtle movement of props or chairs. Shadowy figures sometimes appear near stage curtains, silently observing, as though waiting for a performance that no living audience can witness. On occasion, the piano in the auditorium will play a single note or chord without explanation, adding to the haunting ambience of the space. Local historians suggest that Boca Raton High's paranormal activity may be connected to its long history and the lives that have passed through its halls. Tragedies, accidents, and untimely deaths may have left a lingering imprint, a residual energy replaying events over and over. Others propose that the school's architectural design, the creaking floors, narrow corridors, and high ceilings acts as a natural amplifier, making ordinary noises and movements appear supernatural. Regardless of the cause, the reports are consistent across generations, lending weight to the belief that some form of presence remains within the building. Security staff and night personnel often provide the clearest evidence of paranormal activity. Cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through hallways, lights turning on and off without explanation, and doors swinging open seemingly by themselves. Audio recordings occasionally pick up whispers, the shuffle of chairs, or the faint scratch of chalk on a board. Attempts to rationalize these events as mechanical malfunctions or illusions often fall short, leaving witnesses convinced that Boca Raton High is more than just a building. It is a repository of memory and presence. Despite its haunted reputation, Boca Raton High continues to thrive as a place of learning. Students attend classes, sports teams practice, and teachers carry out daily lessons. But when the final bell rings and the hallways empty, the atmosphere transforms. Lights flicker without cause, chairs move on their own, whispers echo through abandoned corridors, and shadows slip along hallways unseen. Phantom students may roam, spectral teachers may appear at blackboards, and the memories of generations continue to linger. Sarasota High School, a long-standing educational institution in Southwest Florida, is known for its rich academic history and vibrant student life. Yet, beyond the daily bustle of classrooms and hallways, the school holds an eerie reputation that has persisted for decades. Staff, students, and occasional visitors have reported ghostly figures walking between classrooms, sudden cold spots in otherwise warm hallways, and doors slamming shut with no explanation. Some claim to have felt invisible hands guiding them through the corridors, a chilling reminder that the past may never truly leave the building. The oldest parts of Sarasota High, with brick walls, tall windows, and long hallways, seem to be the epicenter of paranormal activity. Teachers who stay late preparing lessons often describe a heavy sense of presence, as if unseen eyes are tracking their movements. Footsteps echo in empty corridors, lockers rattle without human contact, and shadows are glimpsed at the periphery of vision, vanishing when approached. These experiences are particularly common in the classrooms and hallways of the school's original wings, where generations of students have once learned, played, and walked daily routines now etched into the building's memory. One frequently reported phenomenon occurs in the science wing, where classrooms dating back decades remain in use. Teachers grading papers or setting up experiments after hours have witnessed lights flickering above their heads, sometimes in patterns that suggest movement rather than malfunction. Chairs may shift slightly on their own, and the faint sound of chalk scratching across blackboards has been reported, forming letters or shapes before fading away. At times, spectral figures resembling teachers appear at the front of the classroom, writing notes or giving lessons to unseen students. These figures are often described as translucent and indistinct, yet their presence is undeniably palpable, leaving witnesses with the chilling awareness that they are not alone. Students have shared similarly unsettling experiences. One student, who stayed late to complete homework in the library, reported feeling a sudden cold breeze sweep across the room, followed by the sensation of someone brushing past her shoulder. She looked up to see a shadowy figure standing near the doorway, only for it to vanish moments later. In the older hallways, Phantom students have been reported walking silently between classrooms, carrying books or backpacks that no longer exist. Some have said they feel invisible hands guiding them along corridors, gently steering them toward or away from certain rooms. These experiences, while frightening, are consistently reported in similar locations throughout the campus. The gymnasium is another hotspot for supernatural activity. Coaches, custodians, and night staff have heard the squeak of sneakers on polished wood floors, the faint bounce of basketballs, and the shuffle of unseen footsteps across bleachers. Shadows are occasionally glimpsed moving in formation, as if a team from decades past is running drills. Lights often flicker in patterns that mimic these movements, adding to the sense of an invisible presence rehearsing routines long since forgotten. Those who witness such phenomena report a strong feeling of being observed, a presence that seems aware of their every move. Even the hallways connecting classrooms contribute to Sarasota High's haunted reputation. Security staff making nightly rounds frequently report hearing footsteps following them, only to find empty corridors when they look back. Doors that were securely closed are sometimes found ajar moments later, and lockers occasionally rattle or open as if someone were using them. Shadows have been seen moving just at the edge of vision, vanishing into stairwells or classrooms before investigation is possible. Faint whispers, indistinct conversation, and occasional giggles often accompany these events, leaving those present with a lingering sense of unease. The library, a repository of decades of learning, is particularly active. Students staying late often report the sensation of being watched. Books sometimes fall from shelves without explanation, and chairs move slightly as if nudged by unseen hands. Shadows have been seen gliding between stacks, vanishing before anyone can approach. Whispered voices drift across the room, sometimes repeating names or fragments of conversations from decades past. Even the faint scratch of chalk on blackboards has been reported in adjacent classrooms, as if lessons from generations ago are replaying themselves for anyone attentive enough to notice. Auditoriums and stage areas, where school assemblies and performances have taken place for decades, are also sites of paranormal activity. Staff remaining after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps across the stage, chairs moving slightly, or the soft scuff of shoes on the floor. Shadowy figures are sometimes glimpsed near stage curtains, silently observing as if waiting for a performance that no living person can see. On occasion, the piano plays a note or chord without human contact, a subtle yet unnerving sound that lingers in the otherwise silent space. Local historians suggest that the hauntings at Sarasota High are linked to the school's long history and the lives that have passed through it. Tragedies, accidents, and untimely deaths may have left emotional imprints within the walls, creating a kind of residual energy that manifests as ghostly activity. Others believe the building's architecture, creaking wood floors, narrow corridors, and brick walls naturally amplifies ordinary sounds and movements, turning them into experiences that appear supernatural. Security personnel and night staff often witness the most vivid activity. Cameras sometimes capture fleeting figures moving along hallways or stairwells. Lights turn on and off without explanation, and doors swing as if moved by invisible hands. Audio recordings have picked up faint whispers, the drag of chairs, and footsteps in empty classrooms. While skeptics attempt to attribute these occurrences to mundane causes, those who experience them firsthand insist that Sarasota High is a building alive with memory and presence. Despite its haunted reputation, Sarasota High continues to operate as a vibrant educational institution. Students attend classes, teachers lead lessons, and sports teams practice regularly. Yet once the final bell rings and the campus empties, the atmosphere changes. Shadows move silently along hallways. Cold drafts sweep through classrooms, doors slam unexpectedly, and phantom students replay routines from decades past. Naples High School, a long-standing educational institution in the heart of Southwest Florida, carries a reputation for both academic excellence and a lingering sense of mystery. While students and teachers go about their daily routines, The school's history is quietly entwined with unexplained phenomena that have persisted for decades. Phantom activity is frequently reported, from shadowy students appearing near lockers to ghostly laughter echoing through empty classrooms. Visitors and staff often describe unexplained noises, the soft scraping of chairs across floors, and the sensation of being followed along hallways late at night, as if unseen eyes are watching every step. The older wings of Naples High, with their high ceilings, long hallways, and original brick construction, are the epicenter of much of the paranormal activity. Teachers who stay late to prepare lessons or grade papers often describe hallways filled with an eerie tension, punctuated by footsteps that echo in rooms long since emptied. Doors swing open or close without cause, lights flicker unexpectedly, and shadows are glimpsed at the edges of vision, disappearing before anyone can investigate. The feeling of being watched is a common experience, leaving many with a sense that the school itself is alive with memory and lingering presence. One of the most active areas is the hallway connecting classrooms along the oldest wing. Staff members working late have reported seeing figures resembling students walking silently between rooms, carrying backpacks or books that are no longer present. These shadowy forms often vanish when approached, leaving only the sound of their footsteps fading into the distance. Teachers have also described faint laughter, soft whispers, and murmured names drifting through the corridors, even when no other person is present. Some have felt the subtle brush of an invisible hand, guiding them along the hall or gently nudging them in a certain direction, a sensation that can be both chilling and disorienting. Classrooms themselves are sites of frequent activity. In the older science and math rooms, chalkboards occasionally reveal markings that appear without human intervention. Teachers have reported seeing ghostly figures at the front of the room, poised as if instructing unseen students. Lights flicker in rhythmic patterns, chairs shift slightly, and objects seem to move of their own accord. One custodian recounted entering a classroom late at night to find a chair moved away from the desk, as if someone had been sitting there moments before, though no one was present. These experiences are most commonly reported in rooms that have been in use for decades, suggesting that the history of the space itself may be connected to the manifestations. The gymnasium, with its polished floors and high ceilings, also attracts frequent reports of paranormal activity. Coaches and custodians working late have described the squeak of sneakers, the bounce of invisible basketballs, and faint footsteps pacing the bleachers. Shadows are sometimes glimpsed moving across the court, as if unseen teams are practicing drills from years past. Lights in the gym occasionally flicker in response to these movements, reinforcing the impression that something unseen is occupying the space. Witnesses report a strong sense of presence, as though the ghosts are aware of them and observing their every action. Even the library is not immune to strange occurrences. Students staying after school to study often report the sensation of being watched. Books occasionally fall from shelves, chairs slide slightly across the floor, and shadows move silently between stacks. Faint whispers drift through the room, sometimes calling names or repeating fragments of conversation from decades past. These experiences leave a lingering impression on anyone present, as if the memories of former students are replaying themselves for those willing to notice. Auditoriums and stage areas have also been sites of spectral sightings. Staff members remaining after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps on stage, soft scuffing from the seats, and occasional faint applause from an empty auditorium. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen near stage curtains, silently observing performances that no living audience can witness. Occasionally, the piano in the auditorium will play a note or chord without human touch, adding to the haunting ambiance of the space. Local historians and longtime residents suggest that Naples High's paranormal activity may be tied to its extensive history. Over decades, the school has seen countless students, teachers, and staff pass through its halls. Accidents, personal tragedies, and untimely deaths may have left residual energy within the building, manifesting as ghostly students walking hallway, spectral teachers conducting lessons, and laughter drifting from empty rooms. Others theorize that the school's architecture, the combination of brick walls, creaking floors, and long corridors naturally amplifies ordinary sounds, creating experiences that appear supernatural. Security personnel and night staff often witness some of the most vivid activity. Cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through hallways and stairwells. Lights turn on or off without explanation. Doors swing as if nudged by invisible hands. And audio systems occasionally record whispers, footsteps, and the subtle scraping of chairs. While skeptics attempt to rationalize these events as mechanical failures or illusions, the consistency of reports over the decades suggests that something beyond the ordinary is present within the building. Despite its haunted reputation, Naples High continues to function as a vibrant educational institution. Students fill the hallways, teachers conduct lessons, and sports teams practice in every corner of the campus. Yet once the last bell rings and the hall's empty, the atmosphere transforms. Shadowy students traverse the corridors, doors slam without cause, and the cold sensation of unseen presences sweeps through classrooms. Laughter drifts through empty rooms, whispers echo from corners, and visitors occasionally feel invisible hands guiding them down hallways. Palm Bay High School, located in the heart of Florida's Space Coast, is a bustling center of learning by day, yet after hours it reveals a side far less ordinary. For decades, the school has been the subject of numerous reports of paranormal activity. Visitors, staff, and even students who have stayed late for projects or extracurricular activities often describe ghostly figures appearing in classrooms, doors opening and closing without cause, and whispers echoing through hallways long abandoned. The sense of presence is tangible, a lingering energy that seems to replay moments from the school's extensive history. The oldest parts of the school, constructed decades ago, appear to be the focal points of these occurrences. Teachers who remain after the last bell have described hallways filled with a heavy stillness, broken only by sounds that should not exist. Footsteps on tiled floors, lockers rattling, or faint murmurs drifting from empty classrooms. Shadows flit at the edges of vision, vanishing when approached, and lights often flicker in rhythmic patterns that suggest movement rather than malfunction. Many staff and visitors report a persistent feeling of being watched, a presence that seems aware of their every step. Classrooms, particularly those in the original wings of the school, have long been associated with ghostly activity. Teachers grading papers or preparing for the next day frequently notice lights flickering, chairs shifting slightly, and faint chalk marks appearing on blackboards as if invisible hands were completing unfinished lessons. Some witnesses have seen translucent figures at the front of the classroom, poised as if delivering lectures to unseen students. The experience can be unsettling, especially when combined with sudden cold spots that appear without explanation, chilling the room in the humid Florida climate. Students who have stayed late for study sessions or club activities also report unnerving experiences. One student described working alone in the library when she felt a cold brush on her shoulder, followed by the soft sound of footsteps approaching and retreating. Shadows were glimpsed moving past the bookshelves, disappearing when she turned to confront them. Others have recounted hearing their names whispered in empty hallways or witnessing lockers swing open and closed by themselves. These sensations often create the impression that the school is alive with echoes of those who once walked its halls. The gymnasium, with its polished wooden floors and towering ceilings, is another hotspot for paranormal activity. Coaches and custodians working late have heard the squeak of sneakers, the bounce of unseen basketballs, and the shuffle of footsteps across bleachers. Shadows are sometimes seen moving in formations, as if ghostly teams are practicing routines from decades past. Lights in the gym often flicker in sync with these movements, creating the impression that invisible figures are engaging in sports activities long after the living have gone. Witnesses describe a strong feeling of being observed, an awareness that they are not alone, even in a vast, empty space. Hallways connecting classrooms are frequently the site of unexplained phenomena. Security staff making nightly rounds often report hearing footsteps following them, only to turn and find empty corridors. Doors that were securely locked moments before may be found wide open, and lockers sometimes rattle or open as if someone were using them. Shadows move just at the edge of vision, disappearing into stairwells or classrooms before anyone can investigate. Faint whispers, snippets of conversation, and occasional soft laughter accompany these events, leaving a lingering sense of unease among those present. Even the library has its own share of supernatural encounters. Students and staff staying late report the sensation of being watched. Books sometimes fall from shelves without cause, chairs shift across the floor, and shadows glide silently between stacks. Whispered voices drift from the corners, sometimes calling out names or repeating fragments of conversation from years past. In adjacent classrooms, faint scratches of chalk on blackboards have been reported, as if lessons from decades earlier are being silently replayed. These auditory and visual experiences contribute to the school's reputation as a building where the past is never truly gone. Auditoriums and stage areas are not immune to spectral sightings. Staff remaining after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps on stage, the scuff of shoes across the floor, and the movement of chairs in empty seating areas. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen near stage curtains, silently observing as though waiting for a performance that no living audience can witness. Occasionally, the piano will play a single note or chord without human contact, adding an unnerving sound to the otherwise silent space. Local historians suggest that Palm Bay High's paranormal activity is tied to its long history. Over decades, countless students, teachers, and staff have passed through its halls. Tragedies, accidents, and sudden deaths may have left residual energy embedded within the building, manifesting as ghostly students walking hallways, spectral teachers delivering lessons, and whispers drifting through empty rooms. Others theorize that the school's architectural design, the creaking floors, narrow hallways, and brick walls amplifies ordinary sounds, making them appear supernatural. Security personnel and night staff often witness the most vivid activity. Cameras occasionally capture fleeting figures moving along hallways or stairwells. Lights turn on and off without explanation. Doors swing as if nudged by invisible hands. And audio systems pick up whispers, footsteps, and faint dragging noises. Skeptics may attempt to rationalize these experiences, but those who encounter them firsthand insist that Palm Bay High is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Despite its haunted reputation, Palm Bay High continues to operate as a thriving educational institution. Students fill classrooms, teachers deliver lessons, and sports teams practice on the fields and in the gymnasium. Yet once the final bell rings and the hall's empty, the atmosphere changes. Shadows glide silently along corridors. Cold drafts sweep through rooms. Doors slam unexpectedly, and whispers echo through the empty wings. Phantom students roam hallways. Spectral teachers appear at chalkboards, and faint laughter drifts from classrooms long abandoned. Miami Senior High School, a historic institution in the heart of Miami, is renowned for its striking architecture and decades of academic tradition. Yet beyond its lively classrooms and bustling hallways lies a quieter, darker side, one that has fascinated and unnerved students, staff, and visitors for generations. The school is widely regarded as haunted, with countless reports of ghostly apparitions in stairwells, phantom footsteps echoing through empty corridors, and lights flickering inexplicably during quiet hours. Many witnesses claim to see figures sitting in classrooms long after school hours, their presence barely visible, yet undeniably real. The school's oldest wings, built in the early 20th century, are the epicenter of much of the paranormal activity. Teachers and custodians who remain late often speak of hallways filled with an almost tangible tension, broken only by sounds that should not exist, footsteps on tiled floors, the faint scrape of chairs across the room, or whispers drifting down empty corridors. Shadowy forms are often glimpsed in the corners of classrooms or near windows, vanishing when approached. Many who have experienced these phenomena report a profound feeling of being watched, as though the school itself remembers the generations of students who once walked its halls. Stairwells, in particular, have garnered a reputation for spectral sightings. Staff members staying late have recounted seeing translucent figures ascending or descending the stairs with slow, deliberate movements. Some witnesses describe these figures as faintly outlined students, their forms shadowy but distinct enough to convey the sense of a living presence. Phantom footsteps often accompany these sightings, echoing through the stairwells even when no one else is present. Custodians and security personnel frequently describe the unsettling experience of following a set of footsteps that vanish just as they reach the top of the stairs, leaving only silence and a lingering chill. Classrooms themselves also host unexplained activity. In the older rooms, some witnesses have seen figures seated at desks, as if attending a lesson that no living student is present to take. Lights sometimes flicker in response to their presence, or faint shadows move across blackboards and walls. Chairs can shift slightly, papers flutter as if disturbed by a breeze that does not exist, and chalk occasionally scratches across boards without human touch. Teachers preparing lessons after hours have reported hearing soft murmurs or the distant hum of conversations, their source entirely untraceable. The hallways connecting classrooms are no less active. Security staff making nightly rounds often hear footsteps trailing them, only to find empty corridors when they turn around. Doors that were securely closed moments before may swing open suddenly, while lockers occasionally rattle as if someone is attempting to open them. Shadows are frequently glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, moving just beyond view before disappearing entirely. Whispers, laughter, and faint murmurs drift through these hallways, leaving visitors with the unmistakable impression that the school is alive with memory. The auditorium and stage areas, central to the school's arts programs, are also known for unusual phenomena. Teachers and custodians staying after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps across the stage, the scuff of shoes in the empty seating area, and chairs moving slightly on their own. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen near the stage curtains, silently observing as if awaiting a performance long past. On rare occasions, the piano in the auditorium plays a single note or chord without anyone present, filling the room with a haunting sound that lingers in the silence. Even the library, a space dedicated to study and reflection, hosts its own spectral presence. Students who have stayed late often report the sensation of being observed, accompanied by subtle movements of books or chairs. Faint whispers drift between the shelves, sometimes repeating names or snippets of conversations from decades ago. Shadows have been glimpsed gliding silently between stacks, vanishing before anyone can approach. The cumulative effect of these experiences contributes to the school's reputation as a place where history is not just remembered, but continually enacted by the spirits of former students. Local historians suggest that the hauntings may be linked to the school's long and eventful history. Over decades, thousands of students have passed through its halls, along with teachers and staff who dedicated years to its classrooms. Accidents, tragedies, and untimely deaths may have left residual energy within the walls, creating the perfect conditions for ghostly activity. Others argue that the school's architectural features, the high ceilings, long corridors, and creaking wooden floors, amplify ordinary sounds, making them appear supernatural to those who are sensitive to the environment. Security personnel and night staff often provide the clearest accounts of paranormal activity. Cameras have captured fleeting figures moving along hallways or up stairwells, lights switch on or off without explanation, and doors swing as if nudged by invisible hands. Audio recordings have picked up whispers, footsteps, and faint chairs scraping in classrooms long since emptied. Despite skepticism, the consistency of these experiences across decades lends credibility to the school's haunted reputation. Despite the eerie reputation, Miami Senior High continues to function as a thriving educational institution. Students fill classrooms, teachers conduct lessons, and extracurricular activities keep the campus lively. Yet, once the final bell rings and the hallways empty, the atmosphere changes. Shadows move silently through stairwells. Cold drafts sweep across rooms. Doors open and close by themselves, and whispers echo from empty corners. Ghostly students may appear in classrooms. Phantom footsteps trail down hallways, and the lights flicker with no source of electrical disturbance. Pensacola Senior High, a historic institution in the heart of Pensacola, Florida, is known for its academic programs, spirited student body, and long-standing traditions. Yet, beneath the lively classrooms and bustling hallways lies a quieter, darker side that has fascinated and unsettled students, staff, and visitors for decades. The school has a reputation for paranormal activity, with reports of sudden cold drafts, ghostly whispers, and shadowy figures moving along hallways. Apparitions are often seen in the older parts of the school, areas that have been closed off for years, where the echoes of the past seem to linger with an almost tangible presence. The school's oldest wings, constructed decades ago, appear to be the focal points of most paranormal activity. Teachers and custodians who stay late often describe hallways filled with an oppressive stillness, punctuated by unexplained noises, footsteps on tiled floors, lockers rattling, or the faint whisper of voices drifting from empty classrooms. Shadows are sometimes glimpsed at the edges of vision, disappearing when approached, and lights flicker without cause. Many who have experienced these phenomena report a persistent feeling of being watched, a presence that seems aware of their every movement. One of the most active areas is the West Wing, an older section of the building that has largely been closed off, but remains accessible through occasional maintenance work. Staff members have reported seeing shadowy figures moving silently along hallways, appearing near doorways, or standing at the edge of classrooms. These figures often resemble former students, their forms translucent but distinctly human. Phantom footsteps are frequently heard following those navigating these corridors. Yet, when they turn, the halls are empty. Some witnesses report faint whispers calling their names or repeating fragments of conversations from years past, amplifying the sense that the school is alive with memory. Classrooms in these older wings also host unsettling activity. Lights may flicker in rhythmic patterns, chairs shift slightly on their own, and objects such as books or papers occasionally move without explanation. Teachers working late have sometimes seen ghostly figures seated at desks, as if attending a lesson long after school hours have ended. Shadows occasionally glide across walls and blackboards, forming fleeting shapes that vanish upon closer inspection. Some have felt a sudden chill in the air, a cold spot that passes over them with no identifiable source, leaving a lingering sense of unease. The hallways connecting classrooms are frequently the site of strange phenomena as well. Security staff making nightly rounds often report the sensation of footsteps following them, only to find empty corridors when they turn to check. Doors that were securely closed may swing open suddenly, while lockers occasionally rattle or open on their own. Shadows move just beyond the edge of sight, vanishing into stairwells or classrooms before anyone can investigate. Faint laughter, whispers, and murmurs drift through the halls, creating an atmosphere that is both eerie and unshakable. The auditorium and stage areas are also known for unusual occurrences. Staff remaining after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps across the stage, chairs shifting slightly, and the soft scuffing of shoes across empty seating areas. Shadowy figures are occasionally seen near stage curtains, silently observing performances that no living audience can witness. On rare occasions, the piano plays a note or chord without human contact, filling the room with an unsettling sound that lingers long after it is heard. Even the library, a place dedicated to study and reflection, is not immune to the school's ghostly presence. Students staying late often report feeling watched, accompanied by subtle movements of books or chairs. Shadows are glimpsed gliding silently between stacks, vanishing before anyone can approach. Whispered voices drift through the room, sometimes repeating names or fragments of conversation from decades ago. These auditory and visual experiences contribute to the school's reputation as a building where the past is not just remembered, but continually enacted by the spirits of former students and staff. Local historians and longtime residents suggest that the paranormal activity at Pensacola Senior High may be linked to the school's long history. Over decades, countless students, teachers, and staff have passed through its halls, and events, both joyful and tragic, have left lasting impressions. Accidents, untimely deaths, and personal tragedies may have embedded emotional energy into the building, creating the conditions for ghostly manifestations. Others suggest that the school's architectural design, the creaking floors, narrow hallways, and high ceilings amplifies ordinary sounds and movements, making them appear supernatural to those sensitive to the environment. Security personnel and night staff often provide the clearest accounts of paranormal activity. Cameras have captured fleeting figures moving along hallways or stairwells. Lights turn on and off without explanation, and doors swing open or closed as if nudged by invisible hands. Audio systems occasionally record whispers, footsteps, and the subtle scraping of chairs. While skeptics attempt to rationalize these events, the consistency of the reports over decades lends credibility to the school's haunted reputation. Despite its eerie history, Pensacola Senior High continues to thrive as a vibrant educational institution. Students fill classrooms, teachers conduct lessons, and extracurricular activities bring the school to life each day. Yet when the final bell rings and the hall's empty, the atmosphere changes. Shadowy figures move silently through corridors. Phantom footsteps echo down stairwells. Doors open and close without cause. And sudden cold drafts sweep through empty classrooms. Ghostly whispers drift along hallways, creating a sense that the past is never truly gone. Winter Park High School, located in the historic city of Winter Park, Florida, is known for its academic programs, vibrant student life, and long-standing traditions. Yet beneath the daily bustle of classrooms and athletic fields lies a quieter, more mysterious side. For decades, the school has been the subject of numerous reports of paranormal activity. Visitors, students, and staff alike have described ghostly students walking silently through empty corridors, chairs shifting without explanation, and doors slamming shut for no discernible reason. Some witnesses even claim to see apparitions seated at desks or moving about classrooms, as if time itself refuses to move within the walls of the school. The oldest wings of Winter Park High, constructed several decades ago, are often at the center of these unsettling experiences. Teachers and custodians who remain late into the evening describe hallways filled with an eerie stillness, broken only by inexplicable sounds. Footsteps echo across tile floors when no one is present. Lockers rattle as though handled by invisible hands, and distant whispers float through corridors. Shadows appear at the edges of vision, vanishing when approached, and flickering lights add an unpredictable rhythm to the otherwise silent hallways. Many who have encountered these phenomena report a profound sensation of being watched, an awareness that something unseen is following their movements. Classrooms in the older wings of the school are frequently cited as hotspots for supernatural activity. Teachers preparing lessons after hours have reported chairs moving slightly on their own, objects sliding across desks, and chalk scratching across blackboards without anyone present. Apparitions resembling students or former teachers have been seen at the front of classrooms, sometimes seated at desks or standing as if delivering a lesson to invisible pupils. Lights flicker intermittently in these rooms, adding an unsettling visual accompaniment to the spectral presence. Witnesses often feel a sudden chill, cold drafts that seem to originate from nowhere, emphasizing the sensation that the building is infused with residual energy from the past. Students who stay late for study sessions, rehearsals, or club activities often encounter similar phenomena. One student recounted remaining in the library after hours to complete a project, only to feel a sudden brush against her shoulder, followed by the soft sound of footsteps approaching and retreating. Shadows appeared to glide along the stacks and hallways, disappearing as soon as she turned to confront them. Others report lockers opening and closing by themselves, chairs shifting slightly in empty classrooms, or hearing their names whispered softly down long corridors. These experiences, while frightening, are consistent across decades of reports, suggesting that Winter Park High is a place where the past continually interacts with the present. The gymnasium, with its expansive wooden floors and high ceilings, has also been the site of numerous unexplained occurrences. Coaches, Custodians and evening staff have heard the scuff of sneakers on polished floors, the soft bounce of basketballs, and footsteps pacing bleachers when no one is present. Shadows sometimes appear, moving in formation, resembling ghostly athletes practicing drills from years past. Lights frequently flicker in response to these movements, reinforcing the sense of an unseen presence occupying the space. Many witnesses report a lingering feeling of observation, as if the spirits are aware of their every movement. Even hallways connecting classrooms are filled with activity that defies explanation. Security personnel making nightly rounds often report the sensation of footsteps following them, only to find the corridors empty upon investigation. Doors that were securely closed moments earlier may suddenly swing open, while lockers rattle as if being used by invisible hands. Shadows move just beyond the field of vision, vanishing into stairwells or classrooms before anyone can investigate. Faint whispers, distant laughter, and fragments of conversation seem to echo from decades past, leaving those present with a lingering unease. Auditoriums and stage areas are no strangers to spectral encounters. Staff staying after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps on stage, chairs moving slightly on their own, and soft scuffing from empty seating areas. Shadowy figures occasionally appear near stage curtains, silently observing as though waiting for a performance that will never take place. On occasion, the piano will play a note or chord without human contact, filling the otherwise silent space with a haunting resonance that lingers in the air. The library, a place of study and reflection, hosts its own share of paranormal activity. Students working late often report the sensation of being observed, accompanied by subtle movements of books or chairs. Shadows glide between stacks, disappearing before anyone can approach, while whispers drift through the room, sometimes repeating names or fragments of conversations from decades past. In classrooms adjacent to the library, faint scratches of chalk have been reported, as if lessons from long ago are being silently replayed for those attentive enough to notice. Local historians suggest that Winter Park High's paranormal activity is closely linked to the school's long history. Generations of students, teachers, and staff have passed through its halls, and events, both joyful and tragic, have left their mark. Accidents, untimely deaths, and emotional traumas may have embedded residual energy within the building, giving rise to the ghostly phenomena reported today. Others theorize that the school's architectural design, the creaking floors, long corridors, and high ceilings amplifies ordinary sounds, creating experiences that appear supernatural to sensitive observers. Security personnel and night staff often witness the most vivid activity. Cameras occasionally capture fleeting figures moving along hallways or stairwells. Lights switch on and off without explanation, and doors swing open or closed as if nudged by invisible hands. Audio systems have recorded whispers, footsteps, and faint chairs scraping in classrooms long after the building has emptied. While skeptics seek rational explanations, the consistency and frequency of reports suggest that something beyond the ordinary lingers within Winter Park High. Despite its haunted reputation, Winter Park High continues to operate as a thriving educational institution. Students attend classes, teachers deliver lessons, and sports and arts programs keep the school vibrant. Yet once the final bell rings and the hallways empty, the atmosphere transforms. Shadowy students traverse corridors, chairs move without cause, doors slam unexpectedly, and ghostly whispers echo from corners long abandoned. Apparitions sit in classrooms, reliving moments from decades past, and cold drafts sweep through empty wings. Vero Beach High School, nestled along Florida's Atlantic coast, is known for its vibrant student life, academic programs, and rich history. Yet beneath the daily rhythm of classrooms and bustling hallways lies a quieter, more unsettling reality. For decades, the school has been the center of numerous reports of paranormal activity, often tied to past tragedies and the memories of generations who once passed through its halls. Visitors and staff frequently describe shadowy figures gliding along corridors, whispers echoing through empty rooms, and sudden, unexplained cold spots that appear without warning. Much of this activity is concentrated in the school's older areas, including gymnasiums and auditoriums, where the architecture and history seem to amplify the sense of lingering presence. The oldest wings of Vero Beach High, constructed decades ago, serve as the epicenter of many reported phenomena. Teachers and custodians who remain late have described hallways heavy with silence, broken only by sounds that have no clear origin. Footsteps echo down tiled floors, lockers rattle or open by themselves, and soft whispers drift through corridors that should be empty. Shadows are glimpsed at the edges of vision, vanishing when approached, and flickering lights create an intermittent rhythm that amplifies the unsettling atmosphere. Many who have experienced these events report a profound feeling of being watched, as if the building itself is aware of their presence. Classrooms in the older wings are often the sites of particularly vivid activity. Teachers staying late to prepare lessons or grade papers sometimes witness chairs moving slightly on their own, papers sliding across desks, and chalk scratching across blackboards when no one is present. Some have reported seeing faint, shadowy figures seated at desks or standing at the front of the classroom, as though lessons from decades past are being silently replayed. Lights often flicker in these rooms, and sudden cold spots appear without explanation, leaving a lasting impression on those who experience them. Witnesses describe a sensation that time itself seems to slow or pause, creating the impression that the past is not truly gone. Hallways connecting classrooms also harbor unexplained occurrences. Security personnel and custodians making nightly rounds often hear footsteps trailing behind them, only to turn and find empty corridors. Doors that were securely locked moments earlier may swing open without cause, and lockers sometimes rattle as if someone is using them. Shadows appear just at the edge of vision, disappearing into stairwells or classrooms before anyone can investigate. Faint whispers and muffled laughter drift along these hallways, creating an atmosphere that is both eerie and persistent, suggesting that the school is alive with echoes of those who once occupied it. The gymnasium and auditorium, with their high ceilings and expansive spaces, have been the setting for numerous reports of paranormal activity. Coaches and custodians working late often hear the scuff of sneakers on polished floors, the bounce of invisible basketballs, or footsteps pacing the bleachers. Shadowy figures sometimes appear to move in formations, as if ghostly athletes or performers are practicing routines long after the living have gone. Lights frequently flicker in tandem with these movements, reinforcing the impression that unseen entities occupy the space. Visitors report a strong sense of presence, as if these spirits are observing and aware of their every action. The auditorium also hosts unusual phenomena tied to its history of school events, performances, and tragedies. Staff remaining after rehearsals have reported hearing footsteps on stage, chairs shifting slightly, and faint scuffing across the floor. Shadowy figures are occasionally glimpsed near stage curtains, silently observing as if waiting for performances that will never occur. Occasionally, the piano will play a single note or chord without human contact, resonating through the otherwise silent room and amplifying the sense of the school's lingering memories. The library and other quiet study areas contribute to the school's haunted reputation. Students working late often report feeling watched, accompanied by subtle movements of books or chairs. Shadows glide between shelves, disappearing before anyone can approach, while whispers echo faintly, repeating names or fragments of conversations from decades past. Adjacent classrooms sometimes reveal faint chalk marks appearing without explanation, as if the lessons of the past are being quietly replayed for anyone willing to notice. Local historians suggest that the paranormal activity at Vero Beach High may be connected to the school's long and sometimes tragic history. Over the decades, countless students, teachers, and staff have passed through the halls, and accidents or untimely deaths may have left lingering emotional energy. These residual traces may manifest as ghostly students walking corridors, shadowy figures appearing in classrooms, and whispers drifting through empty hallways. Others theorize that the school's architectural design, the high ceilings, long corridors, and creaking floors naturally amplifies ordinary sounds, creating experiences that appear supernatural to those who are sensitive to the environment. Security personnel and night staff often provide the clearest evidence of the school's ghostly presence. Cameras have captured fleeting figures moving through hallways or stairwells. Lights turn on and off without explanation, and doors swing open or closed as if nudged by invisible hands. Audio systems occasionally record whispers, footsteps, and subtle chair scraping in rooms long emptied. While skeptics attempt to rationalize these events, the consistency and frequency of reports over decades suggest that Vero Beach High harbors more than just memories. Despite its haunted reputation, Vero Beach High continues to operate as a thriving educational institution. Students fill classrooms, teachers deliver lessons, and extracurricular activities keep the campus vibrant. Yet, when the final bell rings and hallways empty, the atmosphere transforms. Shadows glide silently through corridors. Phantom footsteps echo across gym floors. Doors open and close without cause, and whispers drift through empty classrooms. Apparitions appear in classrooms, seated at desks or moving silently along the walls, as if time itself refuses to move. Key West High School, situated at the southernmost point of Florida, is known for its vibrant campus life, athletic programs, and long-standing traditions. Yet behind its lively classrooms and busy hallways lies a darker, more mysterious presence. For decades, students, staff, and visitors have reported a range of paranormal phenomena throughout the school. Doors slam without cause, chairs move on their own, and shadowy figures appear where no living person should be. Many believe that the spirits of former students linger in the building, trapped by unfinished lessons or memories that refuse to fade. The school's older wings, built many decades ago, are frequently cited as the most active areas. Teachers and custodians who remain after hours describe hallways filled with an oppressive stillness, broken only by sounds that have no clear origin. Footsteps echo down corridors, lockers rattle as if being used, and whispers drift softly from rooms that are otherwise empty. Shadows are glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, disappearing when approached, and lights often flicker unpredictably, adding to the sense of unease. Those who have experienced these events consistently report a feeling of being observed, as though the building itself is aware of their presence. Classrooms in the older sections of Key West High host some of the most unsettling activity. Teachers staying late to prepare lessons or grade papers have reported chairs moving slightly on their own, books sliding across desks, and chalk scratching across blackboards without human contact. Some have seen faint, shadowy figures seated at desks, appearing to participate in lessons long after the students have gone home. Lights often flicker in tandem with these appearances, emphasizing the presence of something unseen. Witnesses describe a cold chill in the air, sudden and localized, as if the spirits themselves are moving through the room. Hallways connecting classrooms are also hotspots for paranormal events. Security staff making nightly rounds often report the sensation of footsteps following them, only to find the corridor empty when they turn. Doors that were securely closed moments earlier may swing open, while lockers rattle as though being accessed by invisible hands. Shadows are glimpsed moving just beyond the field of vision, vanishing into stairwells or classrooms before anyone can investigate. Faint whispers, muffled laughter, and fragments of conversation echo along these corridors, creating the impression that the school is alive with echoes of its past. The auditorium and gymnasium, central to the school's sports and performing arts programs, are also sites of frequent supernatural activity. Coaches, custodians, and staff working late often hear footsteps on polished floors, the bounce of invisible basketballs, and the scuffing of shoes across empty bleachers. Shadowy figures appear to move in formations, resembling ghostly athletes or performers rehearsing routines long after the living have left. Lights flicker in rhythm with these movements, reinforcing the feeling of being watched. Visitors describe a strong sense of presence, as if the spirits are aware of every step taken in these vast, empty spaces. Stage areas in the auditorium have their own share of ghostly encounters. Staff, staying late for rehearsals, have reported hearing footsteps on stage, chairs moving slightly, and the soft sound of shoes across the floor where no one is present. Shadowy figures occasionally appear near the stage curtains, silently observing as though awaiting a performance that will never occur. Occasionally, the piano in the auditorium will play a single note or chord without human contact, resonating through the room and amplifying the sense of the school's lingering memories. Even quieter spaces like the library and study rooms host paranormal activity. Students working late often feel the sensation of being watched, accompanied by subtle movements of books or chairs. Shadows glide between stacks, vanishing before anyone can approach, while whispers drift through the room, sometimes repeating names or fragments of conversations from years past. In adjacent classrooms, faint chalk marks have been observed appearing without explanation, as if lessons from decades ago are being quietly replayed for those attentive enough to notice. Historians and longtime residents suggest that the hauntings at Key West High are tied to the school's long history and the experiences of the students and staff who pass through its doors. Over decades, accidents, tragedies, and sudden deaths may have left residual energy within the building, creating the conditions for ghostly manifestations. These echoes of the past might explain why so many spirits appear to replay ordinary school activities, trapped by unfinished lessons or unresolved moments. Others theorize that the school's architecture, the high ceilings, narrow hallways, and creaking floors, amplifies ordinary sounds, making them appear supernatural to those sensitive to their surroundings. Security personnel and night staff often provide some of the most compelling accounts of paranormal activity. Cameras have captured fleeting figures moving along hallways or up stairwells. Lights switch on and off without explanation, and doors swing open or closed as if nudged by invisible hands. Audio recordings occasionally pick up whispers, footsteps, and subtle chairs scraping. While skeptics attempt to rationalize these experiences, the consistency and frequency of reports over decades suggest that Key West High harbors more than just memories. Despite its haunted reputation, Key West High remains a thriving educational institution. Students fill classrooms, teachers deliver lessons, and extracurricular activities bring energy and life to the campus. Yet, after the final bell rings and the halls empty, the atmosphere shifts. Shadowy figures traverse corridors, doors slam unexpectedly, chairs move without cause, and ghostly whispers echo from corners long abandoned. Apparitions appear in classrooms, sometimes seated at desks, sometimes wandering the halls, as if time itself has paused for them. And there you have it, 25 haunted schools in Florida, where time stands still. Shadowy figures roam the hallways, and the past refuses to leave. These schools remind us that education isn't the only thing left behind in classrooms. Some memories and some spirits linger long after the final bell. If this journey into Florida's haunted schools sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another ghostly tale. Until next time, tread carefully through these halls, because some lessons are never truly over, and some spirits never graduate.